Did your high school crush age like a fine wine or burn out like a bright star? Mine had a roller coaster of a life. I admire him more now than ever, and more than most people I know, but I can't wrap my head around why I ever found him physically attractive. Maybe it was just always his heart. By age 25, he had a PhD, a wife, and was captain in the Navy. By 30, he had 2 PhDs, a small business where he made a metric butt-ton of money, and his wife was preggers. By 31, he was diagnosed with stage 4 skin cancer that swiftly spread to his lymph nodes, bones, esophagus, and a few other places. He was told he had a minimal chances of making it more than 5 years. Even with the best health insurance money can buy, it still basically wiped him out. 7 years later, he's living a comfortable but not extravagant life as a civilian contractor for the Navy. Same wife and 2 happy, healthy kids, and spends most of his free time advocating for better public healthcare. I remember walking up to her and asking if we could talk in private. She said, "You can say what you need to in front of everyone else." Her group of friends was all around us, so I asked if she wanted to go on a date. She burst out laughing and said, no. It was rough, man. Looked her up last year and she's a cage fighter now. Mine, unfortunately, decided to not be alive anymore. Found out later she had a crush on me as well. Frick life sometimes. They began acting. It's weird. Every so often I'll see a commercial or something and be like, "Oh, hey, I know them." My crush is an incredibly sweet person, so I'm happy for them. I had 2 unrealized crushes in high school. One is a teacher and musician. She's married and has either 1 or 2 kids. We've kept in loose contact via social media and ran into each other at a New Year's Eve party shortly before she got married. I was introduced to her now husband as her favorite ex ever. He seemed like a decent guy and I'm happy for her. I believe the other crush became a US attorney. I haven't heard from her since Google Plus almost became a social media thing. I imagine she's still very productive and would be disappointed in my life choices. He's an attractive gay man, and I am none of those things. Same with my crush. He was my first serious crush and my first slow dance at a middle school dance. Now he's gay, attractive, was in the military, and owns a photography studio. He does some great headshots. My English teacher still looks fine as F. You know, I had wondered how many of these answers would be teachers, and that's our first confirmed one. We've had other people say that they had crushes who were teachers now, but I'm not sure if they were teachers or students at the time of said crush. My only girlfriend in high school was my crush. Her mum banned her from dating me after about a year because my girlfriend admitted to her mum that we were fooling around. This was about 20 years ago. She's still living with her mum, no kids, and as far as I know, never dated seriously after her mum broke us up. Still has the same job from high school too. It's like her mum went way into protective overdrive and my former girlfriend never got to grow up. It's really sad. I met her in 1987. We got married 5 years ago. We used to go to the same punk shows. That's where we met. Mine was my best friend. She turned out to be a criminal. She always liked younger guys, like when she was 17 and had a 13-year-old boyfriend, which was odd, but we were kids and didn't think about it much. Turns out her tastes didn't age with her and it became legally problematic. Found her on Tinder and she said I was hot. Pointed out that I was a loser that she used to know in high school. Had a big laugh. Been a little over a year, now we send each other memes and hang out occasionally when the pandemic isn't being a hassle. She's still hot, successful, and a wealthy entrepreneur, and married someone with the same first name as me who quit his job to brew beer. I crushed on her for a bit. Didn't think she was interested, so I dated other people. Then came to find out she crushed on me senior year, I was too dumb and blind, we connected freshman year of college, and she wrote me letters, and by the time I wised up, she'd moved on. Nobody to blame but myself. Dead by 32. Don't do substances, kids. You know, just seeing this is making me wonder what I ever saw in them. His friend unalived him over a girl. I had a childhood friend, he and I both had the same name, so we called each other by first name, last initial. He got killed in a similar fashion. He was only 24. It was freaking senseless, and the guy who killed him is going away for a long time. Was it worth it, buddy? I was a freshman and had a crush on a senior. To add to it, she was a cheerleader and her brother played quarterback for the football team, and got a college scholarship. She showed up at a football game a couple of years later with a baby in tow. She's married now and back in her hometown. That's about all I know. They both ended up as great guys. One has a huge family and is a minister. The other one only has 1 child and is a college professor. Both married nice people and they seem happy. They were really good guys in high school and ended up being really good adults. I've got both of them on Facebook and we keep in touch peripherally as we stayed friends over the years. I don't know about you guys, but I had way too many crushes in high school to be able to follow any one of them. Yeah, I had a lot of crushes, but the one that stands out was two sisters who both ended up becoming doctors. I did not become a doctor. An insanely talented molecular biology researcher at Boston, and she's still insanely attractive. Okay, people are writing to me and it looks like a lot of people feel like they know the same person. It's crazy how many hot molecular biologists people know. My crush is about to be my fiancé if all goes well. Became a professional cheerleader, died of cancer at 34. Googling names from high school is crazy. My first high school crush who sat next to me in freshman year English was a really cute punk rock girl, and she's gone on to become an incredibly hot fitness model. Haha, my husband. Our first marriages didn't work out and we reconnected after our divorces. If only I would have confessed I had a crush on him in high school, might have saved myself a lot of trouble. Huh. My crush is still hot as F. Yep, they still don't know you exist either. I briefly worked with mine and didn't realize it was her until I left for another job. She looked almost unrecognizable, but it was 15 years after I last saw her. She's married with a couple of kids now, so pretty standard life, I guess. My friend's high school crush was Tom Holland, like they went to the same school. I never made a move in high school. About 7 years after graduating, I saw her on social media and said, "What the hell?" and asked her out. We've been dating for about 2 years and I'm about to pop the big question. This hot D-bag who doesn't really do much except to go to the gym. To be fair, that's how he was in high school, I just liked it back then. If you wanted to always date Chip Matthews from high school, you're gonna end up on a date with Chip Matthews from high school. Yeah, isn't it weird how some of the winners from school end up peaking there and then unless they're capable of change? I know a lot of former people who might have been described as losers in school whose quality of life and status has changed so drastically once they move to a different environment. So don't lose hope in school, kids. Back when I was younger and crushing hard, I got on AOL Instant Messenger and had gotten my crush's screen name from a friend. I worked up the nerve to start a conversation with him, and soon after some awkward small talk, he sent me a message in Comic Sans, black background, red lettering, and in French. I then went to Google for translation and found out he'd just called me a pig in French. Being a seemingly awkward and chubby teenager, I was literally crushed. The heartbreak was only made worse by remembering that a few weeks prior, I'd selected to take French class the next year and couldn't change it. Years later, now that I've blossomed, he follows me on every social media platform and has reached out a couple of times to try and flirt or hang out. Hard pass, man. I believe he's now moved away and is a teacher. I ended things a few years after high school. She was a teacher and got caught having an affair with a female student. Took too many substances and unfortunately passed away last year. I got to see him before he was taken off life support with a really good mutual friend we shared, who was an organ donor too. It was surreal seeing him dwarfed by all these machines. He had one of the largest hearts I've ever come across. She ended up getting knocked up by a freshman shortly after we graduated. She passed away our senior year, 6 months after she agreed to marry me after we graduated. She's still a 10 for looks. I'm sure she kept on as the amazing kind person that she was. She moved to another country, speaks multiple languages, and is more successful than I imagined. Seems happy, but we haven't talked since the time I told her how I felt about 20 years ago. Went on to be a teenaged model for hair products, graduated from Yale, toured Europe, opened her own successful ceramics company that sold worldwide, and is often written up in magazines. Makes me feel like crap every time I think of her. Going to an all-boys school sucks for having realistic crushes. However, I ran into one of the teachers years later, and she still looks bellissima. I checked when I saw the question, and she's actually a very successful artist and an art teacher from a renowned university in France. She even got decorated for her work, Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres. It's a big deal award. My high school ex randomly sent me a text years after we split up that went, "I know you don't like metal, but I thought you would like this," and a link to a clarinet cover of a metal song. I played clarinet in high school. Little did he know that I hated playing clarinet and was now a total metalhead. My crush has a dog and I don't. There was a girl I really admired for a while. She didn't really give me the time of day after freshman year though. She was co-valedictorian and hugged me as I crossed the stage at graduation, and nobody else got a hug. I'm still really confused about that 6 years later. She went on to med school and is either married or at least engaged to a guy she met there. Overall, she's doing really well and I'm happy for her. Sounds like she's a nice person and probably knew you liked her, but didn't want to give you the wrong idea. She probably hugged you because she hoped for the best for you. You were her #1 fan. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I had several. One of them's still a close friend and he became a primary care doctor. He also officiated my wedding. There's another one who I have no idea what happened to. We didn't really have overlapping friend groups and she doesn't do social media. One of them is a math professor now, so that's pretty cool. But my biggest crush in high school was my longtime neighbor, but it also fizzled out pretty quickly after we went to homecoming together. We're still good friends and our families still keep in touch. He's also the guy who introduced me to my husband. I had 3. One from the first 2 years and 2 from the last 2. The first one is now female to male trans, who walked to Colorado to join a cult or commune. He's now in Arizona recording rap albums. The second girl moved to Florida and lives in a swamp. She periodically hits me up to tell me she misses me and how dumb I was that I didn't follow through and that we should get married. The third was a missionary. She wasn't really into it once she grew up, came back home, and I introduced her to one of my closest friends. They've been married for 15 years. 0 out of 3. Why didn't you marry Shrek, the second one? Hedge fund manager with a trophy wife. She turned out great. She married me. We actually met in kindergarten. We reconnected through Facebook in our late 40s. Now I can't stand Facebook anymore. Now she's my wife. She's still beautiful. One I don't keep track of at all. I'm not sure what she's up to. The other one I married. She turned out awesome. I'm just checking in to confirm that I was no one's high school crush, and carry on. Ditto. Nobody's written about a YouTube narrator with a weird accent yet. One day, narrator. One day. Still super hot, she married some loser and has a few kids with him. That loser was me. We just celebrated 22 years of marriage. One I don't keep track of at all. I'm not sure what she's up to. The other I married. She turned out awesome. Blink twice if you're being held hostage. She worked with the Obama administration, I forget in what capacity. Got married to some politician's son. I don't remember and don't care to look it up. She's happy and that's the only thing that matters. Oh, she was also our school's valedictorian. She was so busy with her job that she couldn't organize our high school reunion, so that's a plus. I wasn't head over heels for her, I admired her, but I knew I wasn't for her. Then there's another crush of mine. We ran into each other years after graduation at a grocery store. After talking, I asked her out to dinner at my house. I pull out all of the stops, I buy rainbow trout fillet and make up all the fixings. 6:30 rolls around, I open the door, and who the hell is that man behind her? Oh, this is my fiancé. She'd neglected to tell me she was bringing him. Turns out they wanted to sell me on some multi-level marketing thing. She tried to cross the threshold, I put my arm out and asked them politely to leave. I turned away from the door and had my saddest meal that I've ever eaten in my life. Pretty good. Seems to have her life together, although she had a few setbacks. She's gone back to uni since job prospects in her field kinda sucked, but seems to be really enjoying it. She's dating me though, so clearly her judgment sucks. I found out she was fat and unattractive. Then I realized I was too. He turned out pretty well, joined the military and served for a number of years. He was in after Vietnam and out before the Gulf War, so I'm not sure if he actually saw much active duty. He then settled in Korea where he trained in Taekwondo and did a lot of professional fighting and won a bunch of awards. Attained the rank of Grand Master and returned to the US and opened a very successful school that specializes in Taekwondo and Hapkido. He's opened additional locations and is currently looking to open one in our old hometown. I imagine that will have to wait until after COVID. I had a few in high school. One ended up moving away after sophomore year and nobody knew why. She reached out to me when I had a mental breakdown online and said that she could understand what I was going through. Some effed up crap happened to her, though she never said what specifically. I didn't ask further because it wasn't my business to pry. I'm not sure how she is now. Another one got super hot after high school and she did a degree in science. Again, not sure where she is now, but I think she's doing alright. And the third works at a bank. We ended on bad terms. Partially my fault. I found out she was making fun of me behind my back and had done so for months beforehand, so I sent her an angry message. I haven't seen her since then. Still cute as heck, one of the kindest and most sensitive people I know, and still one of my best friends 15 years later. He also recently divorced. His wife was gay, but needed time and support to come to terms with it. Now he and I are slowly testing the waters. What started as a crush has matured into a deep and rich friendship, and however it might unfold, I'm so grateful to have that relationship in my life. That's how I got my husband. His wife left him for his best friend. Obviously, he was going through a divorce after, and we became best friends. We were always good friends, but it got so much better and we fell in love. It's been 10 years and I can't believe I married such a little hottie. Good luck! She was aware of the crush then, over 30 years ago, but it was unrequited. We've been in casual contact through her Facebook for the past several years, and once before that, my wife at the time, and I had her and her husband over for dinner. From what I can tell, she's grown into a person I probably would have been happy with. It's nice to see my high school perspective got a few things right. I think we'd be good friends if we lived closer. She appears to be living a good life with her husband and family. With my second wife, I'm happier than I could have ever imagined. Life worked out well. Turns out I was attracted to losers and burnouts. That hasn't changed much. Turns out he's gay and got fired from a teaching job for having inappropriate behavior with his male students. Mine are all stunning and wildly successful. One in particular was a crush with a similar name to mine, dating back from my elementary school, which turned out to be the longest crush, an entire decade, and still appearing in a looping dream sequence to this day. Especially after that bitter and frankly traumatic rejection before we parted ways when I confessed to her. At that point, we were classmates for 5 years and were going to different schools. After the separation, that's when the dreams began, and every time I woke up I was feeling emotional all over again. It took me another painful 5 years before I stopped crushing on her, but the dreams never stopped. Just last week I had an update to the dream sequence where we actually talked for the first time in a decade of Groundhog Day levels of dreams. I know, it's pathetic. Life update on that particular crush though. She's currently aspiring to be an architect and had an equally cool boyfriend, so I doubt she ever looked back on her past as much as I do. I recently tried to follow her on her socials to get a life update from herself, but she won't accept my requests, so I'm not going to force her. She's a TikTok influencer who shaved off her eyebrows and draws symbols on her face. Yeah. One is still active duty in the military and has a very successful career as an officer. I hope she continues. The other is successful in the arts, and I hope she continues to be that as well. Both are married to others who treat them well. I'm happy that they're both happy. My life is still going good here, so I have no hard feelings. She married some idiot and had my babies. Man, I hope you can get your babies back. Best of luck! Yeah, I was about to say, either this is very sweet or you have very much wronged some other poor guy. If it's the latter, I hope you, your crush, and the hapless fellow in question can sort out an agreement regarding your illegitimate offspring. The guy I crushed on for 2.5 years did not end up turning out great. I'm still friends with his younger sister, so I know that he's recently acquired his 3rd DUI and his 2nd divorce. He's currently living in his friend's basement and occasionally works for his friend's moving company as a mover, but only when he feels like it. He spends all of his money on booze and owes the 2 mums of his 5 kids tons of child support. But man, was he hot in high school. My second crush in high school is the only reason I got over my first crush. He's currently doing great, mostly because he gets to be married to me for going on 20 years. Harvard, degrees in writing and medicine, became a lead surgeon in a major city. Extremely proud of her. Always had her on a pedestal, I guess with good reason. One of them is homeless and a substance addict. It's very sad. The other one is famous in his home country, is a best-selling author, and is regularly on TV. Don't have a crush on him anymore, but I'm glad we're still friends, and I'm happy for how well he's done. I guess they balance each other out. Multiple degrees, on track to becoming a full-time educator, mother of 2, and my wife. I'm so lucky. Turned out to be gay. So did I. It worked out perfectly. Divorced with 2 kids. I took her and her kids to lunch after meeting her in a mall one day. I hadn't seen her in over 10 years. We caught up on some small talk and I asked the kids if they were hungry, and they said yes. I just wanted to spend more time with her. After lunch, I asked if I could see her again, and she laughed at me and said, "I could never go out with someone like you." She said the exact same thing to me in high school. That's my life. I'm not good enough for anyone. Nah, dude, screw that. I get not being attracted to someone, but saying it like that is super messed up, especially after you fed her kids. Like at least say, let's be friends, or something. He's still hot, got a part-time scholarship to study engineering, and is now dating a Miss Spain runner-up. She's bi and married a woman. She's a speech therapist now. Still really good looking and still a nice person. I'm happy her life turned out well. A racist person who has 3 kids with 3 different women. I'm glad I was too shy to ever make a move on him. Mine is just the same as when we were leaving school. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why he is an ex. When did you realize that he or she was not the one? I usually don't mind age gaps like 5 to 10 years. We'd been dating for about 2 months, and I all of a sudden realized just how different we were. We did enjoy our company together, but every time we were out with her friends, I felt like I was back in my early 20s, and every time we went out with my friends, she found it dull and boring. It just didn't work out, and we both kind of agreed that this wouldn't work in the long run. So we left as friends. I think that was more of a personality thing, not the age difference. I'm 14 years younger than my husband. He's 41, I'm 27. We got married when we were 36 and 22. We both have similar personalities and don't care for the going out scene. His mother is in her early 60s and she does like it. Everything I thought I knew about him was a lie. For example, he was fired from McDonald's for peeing in the parking lot in front of customers. He told me he quit. Of course I quit. I eventually stopped peeing. I couldn't pee forever. My bladder is only so big. Honey, where are you going? Honey! When I became more in love with my memories of her than the person standing in front of me. Holy crap. Thanks. I just got out of a pretty bad relationship. She completely changed from the time that I met her until now. The only thing that kept me going was the image of the girl that I fell in love with. When she tried to shoot me with a crossbow, she was a diagnosed sociopath schizophrenic. We were play fighting and she escalated it by grabbing her bow staff. I grabbed an empty blow dart gun, she knew it was empty, and there was a standoff. She went to the bathroom where I kept my crossbow and started loading it. I was telling her it was no longer funny and this was going too far. She kept loading it, started to aim and pulled the trigger. The bolt flew past my left side and stuck in the wall. A major fight ensued. My friend was in the other room. All she heard was, thunk. Did you seriously try to fricking shoot me? So my question about your story is, why do you have so many weapons lying around? When he didn't want to come and see me, and I had to spend 5 hours in a train every weekend to come and see him. He had the economic possibility to do it, but couldn't be bothered. This worries me. I'm long distance right now, and I'm the one that travels every single time. She came once, over Valentine's Day weekend, so of course everything was packed and not normal in the city. She's recently said that she's not coming back up here again, and her dad thinks she's serious about it. I'm getting my master's degree and will probably be here for at least 2 more years. It just seems like she doesn't want to come and see me as much as she doesn't want to be inconvenienced. Long distance is hard. Honestly, if they aren't willing to discuss putting some reciprocal effort in, it might be time to call it quits. When he spent 3 hours screaming at me for overdrafting our joint checking account, I'd written and recorded 2 checks to pay bills. He'd spent over $100 that week at bars and was mad at me that there wasn't enough money to order himself a pizza. After he called me a stupid B-word in front of our daughter, I threw him out. When I realized I was optional. When we went on a trip that was supposed to be our best trip ever, as it's been 14 months that we were apart, and I just didn't feel like I loved him that much anymore. And all the jokes he said seemed so old and we just didn't click. He was once the love of my life, but time passes and I met more people and got older and realized that he wasn't the one I wanted. It sucks, but I can't help it. When I realized that when something fun happened, when I went somewhere or witnessed something cool, had new experiences, learned something and was enjoying life, he was never there. We had totally different interests. He was a nice guy and we had a peaceful life together, but the things I wanted to do weren't things he wanted to do. Now I have someone who loves the same kind of life I do. Still good friends with the ex though. It's odd, this can go the other way too. Had a few friends that were together and they did everything together. Eventually, she just got sick of never having any space, because if he wasn't there or she wasn't there, the person left behind felt left out. The breakup was pretty ugly there, though they seem fine now if they happen to end up in the same place. It's an odd balancing act, having space and time to be an individual, but not so much that you can never interact. I realized when he proposed. Context, he had just broken up with me. I realized it was a game and I called his bluff. When she was making dinner, she asked me to do the dishes from last night. We had plenty of plates left, so I said I'd do it after dinner, so I wouldn't have to do it twice. She ordered me to do it now, and I said no, and she told me that either I'd do it now or get the heck out of her face, or she'd throw the boiling water with beans over me. That's when stuff kind of clicked and I realized I'd been living with a crazy lady for a while. We broke up a few months afterwards, but I hadn't finished letting her blackmail and intimidate me into giving up all my money and dignity yet. Context behind this question, I'm in that part of life where even after breaking my heart, I have difficulty getting over her and I still think we're meant for each other, despite me trying my hardest to be rational about the situation. I'm going to tell you all what someone told me after my first long relationship ended. I said they were full of crap then and didn't listen. I've later apologized to them. He or she is not worth it. If you aren't together, there's a reason. But there's no such thing as the one. There's just finding the one you can live with happily. I spent months pouting and crying and basically being a big witch to everyone, and in retrospect I want to grab my former self and punch him in the head. She wasn't meant for you, you weren't meant for each other, and by having your head up your butt about it, you're probably missing out on other opportunities in life. I sure as heck did. There were 3 major phases. First, we'd been dating for close to 6 months. He had never seen me wear the same outfit twice, that's how little we saw each other. Second, he kept pressuring me to do the deed with him despite me recently being the victim of unwanted advances. He was not considerate of my hesitation or concerns. And third, I didn't want him to be the father of my future children. I didn't want that future with him. So I broke up with him. When she told me how proud she was of me and I realized a truth that I'd long avoided, I had no respect for her or her opinions. She was a nice person and hot, and I wanted to be in love with her, but I was lying to her and to myself to help get over a bad breakup. I ended it, and it was terrible. It was the right thing to do, but it was terrible. When she told me she hated girls and has no girlfriends. When I realized that he was still his mother's baby boy and checked with his mother on everything. When she sat there telling me she couldn't put 100% into the relationship and that her feelings had changed. Once you hit that point, you realize the relationship will never be what it once was. I think it's better to be honest about those things. It sucks and all, but in the long run it's really for the best, even if it hurts on the moment. When she told me, I think we should see other people. Not sure if I'm reading too much into that though. I'd been miserable for over 2 years, but I guess I was complacent. Anyway, I think the final straw was when we went to Disney World during spring break week, and it was ridiculously crowded. She wanted to catch the train to the other side of the park, but the line was very long and I had to use the restroom, so I said, "Why don't you get in line, I'll run to the restroom really quick and meet you here." Fine, no problem. I got to the restroom and there's a line, so I waited, about 10 minutes, did my business and then headed back to the train line. She proceeded to make a huge scene, cursing and yelling, because I left her in the line alone and if the train had frickin' come, blah blah blah. It clicked right then and there that we were constantly fighting over ridiculous stuff and that I'd become so used to it that I just continually let it happen. I finished out the rest of the trip, fairly numb, but avoided doing anything about it for another 2 weeks or so. We had another fight over what to eat that night and I just snapped and ended it then and there. I'm not a very emotional person, but that relationship messed me up pretty good. It's been almost 2.5 years now and I haven't even attempted to go on a date since then. Only recently am I starting to warm up to that idea. My ex just smoked all day, did all sorts of substances. I'm not against it as long as it's in moderation. She didn't have goals for the future and that put me off. Yeah, that kind of complacence is hard to get past. It's one thing if someone is content to stay at home and further their knowledge through reading and different hobbies or focus on their family. But nothing gives us nothing in most cases. After 12 years of marriage and having 2 kids, he started smoking spice and smack without telling me. He choked me to the point where I started blacking out and I took out my pocket knife and stabbed him in the back to let me go. My survival instincts kicked in. When he got out of jail, he came by against the restraining order. And I swore to him I'd kill him if he touched me again. Then our 10-year-old approached me and told me I needed to divorce Daddy, because if I'm dead on the floor, who's going to protect him and his 2-year-old brother? It broke my heart, but I knew it was time. He's getting served with divorce papers today. Frick. Good for you. You should be proud of yourself for getting out of that. You're setting a great model for your kids, despite all the crap I'm sure they've seen. When I realized I was suppressing my sense of humor to make myself more attractive to him. When she cheated on me with her 45-year-old fat balding co-worker with an ex-wife, a 14-year-old son, and a 6-year relationship with another woman because he's so present when we talk, it's just easy. Good luck with that crap. I was a few weeks away from proposing too. People lose their minds when they have midlife crises. Interestingly, several of her other co-workers reached out to me to say he's known to constantly hit on women at work inappropriately, and he's done this crap before. Part of me almost worries for her. Similar situation for me. Found out 5 months after the fact. 4 months after being talked into signing a lease on a house and 2 months after getting engaged that the ex flew to San Francisco for a business trip. Her response was to get mad at me and tell me that we were in a different place then and we weren't together. B-word, I dropped your daughter off at daycare the morning you flew out and 1 week later you talked to me about the house. Needless to say, engagement was off a week after I found out, moved out, and now have to pay 2 more months remaining on a lease to a place I no longer live in. Oh well, silver linings. Started dating a beautiful engineer with no kids and no effed up childhood and passed to end up screwing up the relationship. Don't worry for her, man, it only leads to doubt. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When he stopped caring about himself and gave up. When she said the following, "I can't wait till I'm old enough to have kids, I've always wanted kids," which rings true for me too, but I don't want you to be the father of my children. I still want to be with you, but I don't think you're father material. We had been together for over a year. We went through the drive-thru at Crystal and she got mad because I asked for my burgers with no onions or pickles. She said I was inconveniencing her. I told her that I didn't love her anymore and broke up with her that day. He was a super nice guy, probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met and ever will meet. I had a really hard time coming to terms with the fact that this perfectly nice, loving, caring man was not going to be the one for me. There wasn't anything wrong, but nothing was really right either. We had a ton in common. I guess we were just missing the chemistry that you need to make it lasting. The relationship lasted almost a year. It took me a few months to really determine it wasn't right. I suppose the moment I really realized was when I thought, he deserves to be loved the way he loves me, but by someone else. And it didn't bother me to think that. It's been about 2 years since we broke up. He's in a very loving relationship now, and I couldn't be happier for him. We'd been living together for around 6 or 7 months, and I'd been letting her stay rent-free after she graduated. I'd come home and she would be stressed out from not having a job, getting rejected, not getting interviews, and I would try and comfort her despite at that time working the most stressful job I've ever had to date. To the point I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, anxiety, and sleeping disorders. I was able to deal with her ignoring me and being unhappy all the time because I always told myself once she got a job, it would get better or get back to normal. Then one day I came home and she complained that I'd left my underwear out on the floor when I left for work that morning, and something just snapped. I'd always known her mother was a perma-grump who could never be happy no matter what, and I couldn't stand being around her for more than a day or two, but suddenly I looked at my girlfriend and I clearly saw her gradually becoming her mother, and me being powerless to stop it. I saw that no matter what happened, no matter what I did, she was always going to find a way to be unhappy, and I just couldn't bear the idea of spending the rest of my life with someone like that. I also resented the fact that she was simultaneously dead set against becoming a traditional homemaker or mother, but at the same time doing a career that paid less than minimum wage. In essence, she just couldn't have been more useless to me if she tried. I wish we had had more time to talk about these things. I wish I could have articulated all of this when we were still together instead of years later, after a great deal of soul-searching. But alas, I needed hindsight before I realized a lot of what I was feeling and thinking. Thanks for letting me get this out, this feels so good to talk about. Thinking more about it, I never feel like she was wrong for not wanting to be a traditional homemaker. I just feel like she would have had to go one way or the other, and I felt like she was going to blame me for forcing her to, and ultimately resent me for it. The worst part was, that was exactly what happened in her parents' relationship, and that was why they divorced. When she complained about me leaving my underwear on the floor, I felt like I could have given her a mansion to live in and enough money to last the rest of our lives, and she would have still found a way to bring us both down over nothing. It broke my heart. I want to clarify something, that when I say she didn't want to do childcare or homemaking, she was super specific about that point. It wasn't just an offhand comment. In fact, every time we started talking about marriage, she would launch into a long spiel about the things she definitely wasn't going to do. I kinda go back and forth with this. What if she was? Don't do that to yourself, man. She's only going to hold you back when the one comes into your life for real. And if you're going to end up with her, it'll happen eventually all on its own. But don't let that possibility cloud your vision. For all intents and purposes, she was not your one. Honestly, when I discovered that he hated animals. I don't hate animals or even dislike them, but I would prefer to not have animals in the house that I live in. I just don't feel like having hair everywhere. Especially when I'm eating and a dog or cat comes by, I feel like there's a hair in my food or something. I love other people's animals, I just don't like animals in the house. Maybe a fish would be okay. Does this make me a butthole? When I went to her house one morning and she had a black eye. She said she tried to break up a fight that a friend of mine was involved in at a club. But later, a person I knew who worked at the club told me how she walked into the girls' bathroom at the club that night, shortly after the fight, and saw this girl punching herself in the eye. She had wanted the attention, I think. My good angel said don't stick with Mrs. Tyler Durden, no matter how sweet dat butt may be. That is a strange level to go to for some kind of validation from your spouse. People are very strange, and I hope she's in a better place now. Was talking to my recently broken up with friend about this. I realized early on his girlfriend wasn't as smart as he was. And that's mean, and I do respect her, but the divide was significant. And mostly it wasn't that she was unintelligent, it was just that she constantly limited her own ability and relied instead on her prejudices and assumptions that were comfortable. Meanwhile, he's the kind of person who hears about something and runs to learn more, can have a thoughtful discussion and admit when he's wrong or when he didn't understand something at one point but does now. She's a great person, but because of the intellectual divide, the power balance of the relationship was horribly skewed. They went for about 5 years, but I think it shouldn't have lasted that long, and to be frank, they're both better off outside the relationship. When she cheated on me. Bum 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 bum. Don't worry about it, Reddit, I dodged a huge gosh darn bullet on that one. When she told me her list of ridiculous fears, started wearing children's clothing, said she started seeing crap and began to suck on pacifiers, and showered less. I was 16 at the time, but still, that's not normal at that age. That's not really normal for any age. When she started doing the deed with someone else while telling me she was going to her friend's cottage. When she moved out of the house while I was at work, but still wanted to stay together, because there was too much me in our house and not enough her. When she threatened to turn my social worker mum into child protective services. She was one of the longest-lasting, highly respected counselors in our community. My ex-girlfriend didn't like her and was a major B-word. This was nearly 2 years ago. It's true that there are bat-crap crazy people who think it's okay to start crap with people for no reason other than their own bat-crap emotions. It's also true that there are a large number of people in caretaking positions who do it because it gives them power over people and allows them to punch down on someone more vulnerable than themselves. The truth in this case? Who knows? When I had to ask for compliments because the never-ending slew of funny insults about my looks and intelligence were beginning to really get me down, his only nice thing to say about me was, "You've got a nice chest." When she told me I wasn't the same person I was before I went to Afghanistan and that she didn't like the person I am now. We just got busy with stuff and didn't feel like putting in the effort anymore. It was a long distance, too. It's a real shame because she was a wonderful person. We still talk, though, from time to time, which is nice. When I realized he talked to me the way he talked to his mother, he didn't like his mother and thought she was totally incompetent. He chose the worst times to tell me heartbreaking things, telling me he'd decided, after telling me otherwise for 2 years, that he never wanted kids, on my birthday, on our way home from my parents, calling me names, ignoring me, refusing to tell me why he was upset with me, and making me cry on the way to my parents for a party, making me lie about why my eyes were all puffy and red. In the end, he cheated on me, and I tried to get over it, but after a few months I realized it wasn't worth it and that he wasn't right for me. We stayed friends until something big happened last year, and I just don't want that kind of drama in my life. I dated a lot of the wrong guys after that, but came to realize exactly what I wanted in a partner, and so I didn't settle for anything that didn't feel right. Very happy now that I found the right person for me. We're planning on getting married and looking for a house this summer. When she dumped me over religion. Rest in peace, awesome relationship. It had been coming for a long time, little things here and there. By this point in our relationship, I felt like I was her servant. I was working 2 jobs to support us. I regularly dropped her off and picked her up from school. We had 2 vehicles, but she didn't like that parking was limited, so she'd have to leave really early to get a spot. It didn't matter if I only had 2 hours of sleep and had to be at work in 4 hours, she got a ride. I doubt she ever fixed her own dinner or got her own beverages if I was home. Didn't matter what I was doing or if what she was doing was unimportant. I regularly helped her with her homework, not just a little either. I'd basically do the research, write the paper, and then spell and grammar check it after she edited it into her own words. I did all of these things for her, but if I ever tried to say no, she'd make me feel like I was lazy. Like I never lifted a finger. She was the hard worker, and I didn't love her enough to do such simple things. Eventually, I wised up and realized we were not good for each other. I broke up with her. Except I chickened out the next morning and apologized. We stayed together for another year or so until she cheated on me. We had been dating for 4.5 years. We were best friends and it was working great, and he was planning the proposal. We thought we had everything figured out. My mum took me on a 2.5-week vacation to another country to visit relatives. I got back to the apartment that I shared with him before he was due home from classes and felt panic when I heard his keys at the door. I wasn't excited to see him. It was weird. It's not like we hadn't kept in touch the entire time I was gone, and it's not like anything had changed. But for some reason, it was just weird. Some part of me just knew. I grew distant and didn't talk to him as much. He brought up my strange behavior about a week later, and another weekend after that, we broke up. He moved out. We don't talk anymore because he loves me and it would hurt him. But sometimes I miss having him as my best friend. What's being in a coma like, and how did life change afterwards? My friend told me that while he was snowboarding, he hit a tree, fell unconscious and was airlifted to hospital and in a coma for 2 weeks. While he was in a coma, he remembers walking in a field, a wolf by his side, walking towards a tree in the distance. For days, he wasn't getting any closer to the tree, then suddenly he and the wolf got closer and closer until they were at the tree. The tree was beautiful and it had a face, but the face kept changing faces, from people he had met in the past to people he met later in life. The tree reached its hand out toward him and was holding a key. He grabbed the key from the tree, held it to his heart, and the wolf disappeared. The tree disappeared and he woke up. He now volunteers in a wolf sanctuary. I can't remember where, but I've heard similar stories. People climbing stairs endlessly, trying to reach an island by a boat, waiting for a plane to land. Only when they got to the top of the stairs, reached the island or the plane landed, and they got off, did they wake up. Honestly, still feeling the after effects some 7 months later. I always feel high, like a piece of me is gone and won't come back. I spent the first 6 weeks after waking up wondering who I was. I've been diagnosed with depersonalization derealization disorder. Look into it, there's a lot of us out there. It's so hard sometimes to get through it. I wake up every morning wondering if I'm even real. No one understands and they just give me Xanax to deal with the panic attacks. Walking in woods really helps me a lot, and just trying to be normal and doing things you used to helps. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't feel like I'm back at square one. To anyone else going through this, all I can say is stay strong. I remember someone saying that they felt the same way you do after a coma, and they felt like they were in that twilight zone you're in when you first wake up from sleeping. He went bungee jumping off a bridge and had a fear of heights, and he said it was like someone flipped a switch and he felt normal again after that. I was in a medically induced coma for 2 weeks or so, and I was on a crap ton of medication and had some horrible hallucinations, an experience I'm told by ICU nurses is very common. I knew I was injured and in hospital. Apparently they kept waking me every day to check my brain function, but I was not aware of why, so I spent a lot of time very confused with vague hospital-based nightmares. Also, some Game of Thrones hallucinations, because my brother visited and talked about the show at my bedside, and I fought a dragon as a result in my head. I can't say exactly how much time passed, because A, it was more than 2 years ago, and I've tried to forget, and B, things from the outside broke in, but from different times than you'd expect. A news story from 1 week into the coma felt like it was at the start of the hallucinations. But I might be remembering things wrong. The brain works in very mysterious ways, especially when you're high as frick. I don't remember waking up or learning about my accident, though I've been informed I had to be told every 30 minutes or so for the first few hours I was awake, as I'd start to panic and be confused. I only remember the day after I woke up, when I already knew what had happened. I wouldn't recommend the experience to anyone, though I did later get a tattoo of a dragon to commemorate it. So far, medically induced coma sounds much less pleasant than the accidental sort. I suppose that in the greater scheme of things, it's probably better to have something like this be controlled, though. I was born 3 months early and spent the first 6 weeks of my life alternating between an NICU incubator and ice baths for the extreme prolonged fever. Although I obviously survived a difficult infancy, my immune system is questionable at best. I've suffered from unexplained fevers, FUO, fevers of unknown origin, off and on throughout my life. When I was 19, I contracted an often fatal infectious disease. My parents were traveling out of the country, so I was home alone, and by the time I realized that I needed medical attention, I couldn't move. It was during this period that I began to slip in and out of consciousness. My older brother lived a few blocks away with his wife and kid. He was trying to be cool and let me party my butt off while my parents were gone, but after 3 days of radio silence, he started to get worried and came to my house to check on me. He found me in my bed, unconscious and radiating heat. He carried me down the stairs, put me in his car, and burned rubber to the ER. He broke 2 of my bones while doing this, but seeing as how I was 6'1", 180 pounds, and literally unconscious, it's not surprising. And before you ask, I have no freaking idea why he didn't just call 911 and let the paramedics do it. I was in hospital for 11 weeks, completely unconscious for 3 of them, and in and out of consciousness for 7 weeks. I have 6 or so extremely disjointed memories that, according to my brother and parents, take place over the next 3 weeks. One was of the sheer panic that ensued in the ER once they got a diagnosis and were trying to quarantine me and everyone who'd touched me. Another was of my parents standing over me weeping. There's absolutely no chronology to my memories themselves, but based on third-party accounts, I've been able to piece together the timeline of what happened to me. The moment that my parents stood over me weeping was right after the doctors told them to go home, get rest, and hit the funeral home the next morning to make my final arrangements. They were standing there weeping, trying to decide what to do, if listening to the physician was the right call. when I opened my eyes and looked around for less than 1 minute before slipping away again. That was all the time they needed to decide, screw that doctor, this is our kid. They never gave up and literally never left me alone again for the duration of my hospital visit. Remember those fevers I mentioned, the ones that I'd had since birth? Yeah, it turns out that a dangerously high, prolonged fever is what killed the virus I had. It also gave me thermal brain damage, but never mind, I'm alive. Just slightly dumber. If you've ever been under general anesthesia, you'll know what a coma is like. That's a kind of medically induced coma. If you haven't had that, it's not even like sleep. You're awake 1 minute and waking from surgery the next, with no awareness of what's happened in between, unless you wake up during surgery. That happened with me last time. I was having chest surgery. I tried to sit up on the operating table. Scared the crap out of the med students. No pain, just confusion, and I went back under pretty fast. Yes, some people do have different experiences with comas, and some people experience floating above their body under anesthesia and hallucinations and delusions. When I come out of anesthesia, I'm violent. Everyone is different, but the majority of people who've been in comas say it's the same thing as going under for an operation. This is kind of what I thought being in a coma was like. When I had surgery, the thing I was most worried about was going under general anesthesia, just because I'd never done it before. I had the needle put into the vein, the nurses were all joking around, no, I don't care that the anesthesia I'm getting is the same thing that killed Michael Jackson. Then I was wheeled into the operating room. They opened the tube and I felt the coolness of the anesthesia going into my vein, then nothing until I was waking up in the recovery room. No wakefulness, no hearing voices, and no passage of time. Simply nothing. Yeah, when I had my wisdom teeth out, my memory is exactly, so we're going to put this in your arm here and we'll put you under in a minute. The procedure went well. It was like I blinked. Kinda terrifying actually. Like every moment I could just wake up and be somewhere else. I feel like it would be really confusing if you had accidentally gone into a coma. Holy crap, I never thought I'd tell this story. I was in a car accident at 19 and in a coma for 3 months. A couple of weird things happened. First, I was fully aware of everything for a couple of days before actually waking up. I couldn't open my eyes or move or talk, but I heard and felt everything. It was terrifying because I honestly thought it would last forever. After 2 days of this, I fell asleep and when I woke up I was fully conscious and never more relieved in my life. I thought at first that I'd just slept for 3 months, but after a couple of weeks of being out of the coma, I started having the weird, most vivid recurring dreams and flashbacks of literally being another person. I'd never experienced anything like this before the coma. I'd never had a recurring dream in my life, but since the coma, I've had the same 4 or 5 dreams hundreds of times, and in each one I'm the same person, but not me. They're freaky, and I always wake up panicked and often find out that I'm sleepwalking as well. And that also never happened before the coma. I'm pretty convinced that during the coma, I lived some other life in a super long and intense dream. It's the only explanation I can come up with. I definitely recall reading about a guy who was in a coma or dream and lived a completely separate life. When he woke up, he was devastated because he had had a whole family, wife and children, in the dream and then they were gone. I've had vivid dreams just when I was lying in bed with a fever, so maybe it's just the default screensaver of an inactive brain. Mine after 2 days were pretty intense and skewed my reality out of whack, so I can imagine a brain's creation after 3 months would be a pretty rough illusion to be pulled out of. I was in a coma for 3 weeks nearly 3 years ago, nearly dying several times from double pneumonia and a strain of flu that was killing younger, healthier people. I remember precisely nothing. Little flashes of faces and pieces of dialogue maybe. Everything I know about that period was told to me by my parents, boyfriend at the time, and doctors and nurses. Maybe some people can hear what's going on around them while they're in a comatose state, but I wasn't one of them. My mum talked to me the whole time and read to me, hoping I could hear. I actually brought a book with me to the ER since it's not like I was expecting the coma, so she found that and read from it. It was The Bedroom Life of Catherine M. When I awoke, I wasn't confused or anything. I recognized that I was in the hospital room, and I remember being in the ER weeks before. It was the last thing I remembered. I thought maybe I'd been there a couple of days and had just slept off the worst of it. Then I saw the dry erase board on the wall in front of me where someone had thoughtfully written the date. My first thought? I'm so tired. My second thought? I can't move. My third thought was, I can't talk? What the frick is this thing in my throat? Get it out! Get it out! Get it out! Turns out the coma is the good part. The recovery afterward, learning to walk again because your muscles have atrophied, waiting for your voice to come back because you've been intubated all this time, trying to pee without help, and oh man, really trying hard to not get depressed. That's the crap show. Epilogue, after I woke up, 1,000 doctors and nurses came in to gawk at me and called me a miracle because apparently that's how close I was to death. The ones that helped me survive kept asking if I remembered them, which made me nuts. Like, I know they spent their entire work shifts for 3 weeks with me, but I was comatose, so sorry, no, I don't remember you. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was in a car accident when I was 17 and was in an induced coma for 2 weeks. I remember bits and pieces. I remember one thing in particular right before being taken off the medication. I remember being told I needed to stop moving because I'd been in a wreck. I remember looking around and seeing 2 midget doctors jumping from one bed to another trying to get to me. They were wearing full-size medical gear that dragged on the floor behind them. They got to my bed and put more medicine in me. I looked back and they jumped off the bed and started walking out the door, laughing. After I was woken from the coma, I asked about the midget doctors. Turns out there weren't any midget doctors. You were in a midget hospital, but then they moved you. Last year, at the end of July, my transplant kidney was failing and I'd caught pneumonia. Doctors were like, "We're gonna put you under for a few days," and I was like, "What do you mean under?" Well, they told me and I called my parents across the United States. Little did I know I'd wake up 5 weeks later. Apparently, it was a fight. I woke to my parents at my side. I thought it was just a day or two, but yeah, 5 weeks had passed and no one told me it was September till I was up for like a week. Missed my 33rd birthday last year. Well, I had really vivid dreams that were mostly great. I'll go into detail about the dreams mainly because I really haven't done it before. Traveling places, seeing things, crazy parties on charter planes with tigers and motorcycles. I can accurately recall about 5 to 10 of them. Then I had one particular nightmare that was really scary, that was like Mario meets dialysis in a 007 GoldenEye bunker. Mind you, my transplant kidney failed while I was under, so they had to put me back on dialysis without my acknowledgement. But that was the only part I can recall. I remember swimming somewhere tropical like Hawaii or something, and the water was really thick but I could still almost breathe. Then another one that was probably the strangest and most laughable. I remember being suddenly in some Asian skyscraper in some fast food joint of all places, trying to play this motorcycle game so I could win money to Uber back home. Then laughing to myself because that would take a lot of money to Uber back from Asia. That one was really weird and felt like Inception or something, the frickin' Matrix. In terms of input, 2 things stuck out. My mum on that plane telling me not to do substances, and the other one was doing yoga with Bindi Irwin. Well, when I woke in September, I was still foggy, but I remembered all of those dreams pretty accurately. I thought I was just having a lot of strange dreams. The Bindi input was apparently because my parents had been watching television and she had been on Dancing with the Stars or was training for it or something. So basically, I was atrophied to crap. I was out for 5 weeks, didn't stand for 10 weeks, didn't walk till 12 weeks. About a total of 7 to 8 months recovery, but was still rough around the edges for most of this year, 2016. Doing much better though. It was the single most horrible 2 weeks of my life. I was put in a coma for 2 weeks and I heard everything. I screamed at myself to wake up, but I couldn't move at all. I stared at my eyelids for 2 weeks, screaming to get up, but was completely paralyzed. I heard my family at my bedside. I felt my girlfriend brushing my hair out of my eyes. I felt the nurse give me a dry bath, but I couldn't move. It was the worst experience of my life. I had surgery. It was 9.5 hours. I didn't wake up. I have one memory of a nurse slapping and screaming at me in the recovery room, then nothing. It was like a TV that was unplugged. The next thing I knew, I woke up to a priest saying last rites over me. I'm not Catholic. I croaked at him to F off because I wasn't going to die. He flees. A nurse comes running in and says I've been in a coma for 4.5 days. I experienced nothing. I was here and then I was gone. Then I was back and it was instantaneous. There was no sensation of the passage of time for me. Who invited the priest? It seems weird that he just showed up. Oh my god, the devil has risen. Flee! Well, it sounds like our friend here lived out a low-budget Exorcist sequel upon returning to the world of the living. I wonder if that priest aged a few years from the shock. Mine was like a really long, vivid dream. Like me in my own body performing these actions that I know have happened before, but all I can do is spectate. Like replaying a video. I pretty much relived entire chunks of my life ranging from hours to days long. I was out for a month. I was in a medical coma due to going septic from a kidney stone. Previous to the coma, I was basically in a room and every time I fell asleep, a crash cart and doctors woke me up. They brought me to surgery and I woke up a week later, but during the coma I was having a nightmare that was so real that when I did come out of it I was convinced it happened to me. I dreamt that I was transferred from the hospital to a doctor's house to recover. They had me in a recliner that I couldn't sit up from, and there was a fireplace with a TV in front of me. In the dream it was someone's birthday at the doctor's house, and any time I called out to ask for help, I was treated roughly and rudely. When I did wake up, I noticed a few things in my room resembled the dream. The bed I was in made it nearly impossible to move. Although my legs were useless and I had to relearn to walk, the room had glass windows in front of me and on the side. And there was a nurse that I remembered that was the only nice person in my dream. My husband said that I seemed lucid and he would ask me questions and get answers. But I don't remember any of that. I went in the night of my son's birthday at the end of July and got out mid-August. It was hell. In 2008, I had to undergo a series of operations to remove a brain tumor that was very close to my brainstem. After the first operation, I'd apparently developed some sort of trouble regulating my blood pressure, and it kept spiking and falling, so the decision was made to put me into a coma. This has never been explained to me, and my memories are very hazy. If any neurologists or neurosurgeons here could tell me the logic, I'd love to hear it. What I mostly remember is having a bad night where I couldn't sleep, because the nurse kept fiddling with my IV. My dad was there, but I had no sense of anything that was wrong. I was just tired. Finally, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was very weak and sore. It felt like I'd slept for 14 hours, but it was something like 12 days. I have no memories of the interim at all. Just like surgery, 1 second you're there and 1 second you're waking up. You never even know that you're gone. In a weird way, this settled all of my fears of death, too. Either the lights go out and we literally never know it, or there's some sort of eternal reward or punishment. If it's lights out, well, I've been there and there's nothing to fear. If it's a reward or punishment, Pascal's wager applies. Since there's no way to know which belief system is right, pick the one that works for you, don't be a butthole, and pray. Although I've never been in a coma, I did go through an experience which is one of the strangest things to happen to me. When I was 19, I visited my aunt during the summer holidays. I was playing my cousin's PlayStation, although I was tired from the journey since I didn't get any proper sleep on the bus and had been awake for over 24 hours. I suddenly started getting an epileptic seizure and fainted. My mum and aunt screamed and tried to wake me up. The neighbors came in, hearing the noise, and took their car to take me to the hospital. They brought me to the hospital and I didn't regain consciousness until almost 3 hours later. The crazy part is this, which my aunt told me later, was that when I lost consciousness, I was still able to get up, put on the jacket and get out the door, and in the elevator, get in my car, set on my way to the hospital, opened the door of the car and walked into the hospital before collapsing on the bed. I had absolutely zero recollection of any of this after I regained consciousness. I was in a coma after a car accident where I sustained a brain injury. The last thing I remember was pulling out of my friend's driveway a couple of times, away from where we got into the accident. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital a few days later. No passage of time, no angels, no meeting with a god who sent me back, just literally nothing in between those two memories, just waking up in a hospital bed. On top of this, I suffered from anterograde amnesia for 11 months after the accident. Though I was conscious and functioning in daily life, I didn't retain any long-term memory. The last thing I remember, albeit briefly, is waking up in the hospital in July 2005. My next clear memory I know I remember is around the time I graduated high school in June 2006. I don't remember anything about my senior year. Sometimes people tell me stories about stuff I did, and it seems like it could have happened to me, but I don't actually recall it firsthand. My mum said one night I showed up at home with a ripped shirt and scratches, and someone's weave in my hand. No idea what happened. I don't think we'll ever know. Not me personally, but a friend of a friend whose story is semi-famous. He's an avid, venomous snake collector with a formidable collection. One day he was handling his king cobra, which decides to make a go at him and nips him in the arm. He assumes it's a dry bite and isn't worried about it, but starts to head toward the hospital just in case. Halfway there, he starts getting very dizzy and sweating profusely. He has to pull over and lay down in the grass because it gets so bad. Calls 911 at this point, and an ambulance gets there in a few minutes to find him struggling for breath. They get to the hospital when the search for antivenom begins, but the only Cobra antivenom nearby was expired. They have a guy fly some in from a neighboring state, but the guy's respiratory system shuts down before the antivenom gets there. Cobra toxin kills people by paralyzing their diaphragm, so luckily they were able to keep him alive by intubating. He was in a coma for 2 or so weeks, and although paralyzed completely, he could hear everything going on, including his family trying to decide whether or not to pull the plug. How crazy. My girlfriend, recently passed, was in a coma from late January to mid-February of this year. She experienced a complete different reality in which someone named Benny saved her from freezing to death on a city bus and gave up his life in the process. She slowly realized it wasn't real after awaking from her coma. But 2 weeks after awakening, I asked her who she liked more, Benny or myself. She thought about it for a bit and said, "Well, he did save my life." Mid-March, when she was released from hospital, she would still tear up when thinking about Benny. I was in a 5-day coma when I was 17, 2013. I was hit by a car and fractured my skull. I don't remember the impact of the accident, but I remember being pulled into a grass yard. I remember the ambulance doors closing. I remember getting to the hospital and then I woke up. There was no concept of time and I ended up losing a bit of my short-term memory as well as having to relearn how to walk. People who've had friends stab you in the back, what's the story? Made plans to go see a movie with my friends for my 16th birthday and planned it weeks in advance. Everyone bailed the day before or on the day, but I decided to go and see the movie anyway. Ran into my whole group of friends leaving the movie theater while buying popcorn. I confronted them. Yeah, a lot of hemming and hawing, with no real explanation and no apology. Still went to see my movie, Underworld, and learned a valuable lesson about people and friends. Sucked at the time, but eventually that lesson was a great birthday gift. It started the process of not showing up for a majority of things and only making brief appearances for a month or so. Then I got to play D&D with some people from jazz band and never really looked back. Best friend stopped talking to me after my dad died. Took the whole friend group with him. Apparently, I was too emotional. I was 13. Having my entire friend group walk away from me when I was in such a crappy place stuck with me forever. This was similar to my experience as well. I lost my father at 9 years old and all but one of my friends ditched me because they didn't know how to deal with a person in grief. I'm still close with the friend that stayed 21 years later. I hope everything is going well for you now. I asked 2 of my friends if they wanted to live together in college. Then one of them asked another person in our friend group if he wanted to join in as well. Then they asked another and another. And then once there were too many friends for one apartment, they dropped me out of it. No longer friends with any of them. Was kind of a wake-up call though because I definitely gave way too much of myself to those people, not knowing I was the most expendable one. It really taught me not to put others on a pedestal and respect myself more, and has since led to me developing more healthy relationships that bring me a lot of happiness. I had one friend, Ben. I was bullied by everyone at elementary school. Because Ben was worried about being bullied too when they hung out with me at school, we only played outside of school. One day, a popular kid asked to play with me during recess. I was ecstatic, until after a while they said, "You're not as bad as that Ben person said you are." And that's how I learned why I was bullied. She slept with my boyfriend because she thought she was in love with me. Wackest crap I ever did hear. Well, they do say that if you do the deed with someone, you're doing it with everyone they've ever done it with. So in a way, she might have fulfilled a goal. Sucks though. I had my 17th birthday and invited my mates to go get a drink at a bar. Everyone accepted, but no one came. After a few hours of drinking alone and phone calls not getting picked up, I saw on Instagram that they were at an electro party having a good time. Apparently they were pre-gaming without me and spontaneously decided to go to this event and forgot about me. Everyone said sorry, but it still haunts me. Don't celebrate my birthday ever since then. I once had a really sad 25th birthday. I never usually celebrate them. Most of the time I just grab 1 or 3 friends and go to a restaurant with them. But this time I wanted to celebrate a bit bigger. I invited 3 different friend groups to a barbecue in the park. I honestly have no clue how this happened, but in the end I was the butt of every joke. Everyone just made fun of me the whole time till it got really annoying and even made a "you can't sit with us, we found new friends" jokes. I had a really hard time talking to anybody because no one really paid attention to me. So most of the time I was sitting alone on my blanket and just got made fun of when I wanted to chime in on a conversation. It was the worst birthday ever, and no one understood why I was so teed off in the end. I even told them the whole evening that they were going a bit overboard with their jokes. I mean, sure, it's nice having a different friend group connect with each other, but on my expense? Screw you. That's why for my 30th birthday, I just grabbed 5 really awesome and good friends and went to the zoo. Several of my housemates decided to move to the West Coast after college. There was one who was planning on going with them that they didn't want to keep living with. They waited to tell her until after they'd driven out over spring break to look at apartments. In her car. Pretty gross, and it really messed with her. I was taking a culinary class with my buddy and he walked behind me with a knife and didn't say anything. I stepped back and got mildly stabbed in the lower back. After 10 years of friendship, you think you know a guy. Wait. Am I answering this right? I had a whole group of friends in high school who one day, out of nowhere, turned against me and brought the entire year group with them. No one spoke with me, were extremely cold for a good 6 months. I even got calls from one girl every day from a blocked number telling me to self-delete. It wasn't until a group project started and the group said the exact same thing. Wow, you're really not like how your old friends said you were. They never told me what was said, so to this day I have no idea what the heck happened here. This happened to a friend of mine. We were friends in middle school but then went to different high schools. We're nerds, so we kind of expect abuse, but what he got there was vicious. I started dating a girl from his school, and upon finding out we were friends, she said, "Why are you friends with him? He does inappropriate things with kids." Turns out he certainly didn't, he was just gay. Someone spread this rumor as a hyperbole because he came on to her brother who's a year younger. People just abandoned all reason and chose to believe the delicious gossip. Been very good friends for over 2 years. Their roommate moved out and they asked me if I wanted to move into their spare room. I was very happy to live with my good friends and I did everything I could to be the best roommate possible. After 3 weeks, they found another source of income and kicked me out. First, they offered to help me find another accommodation, but the next day they changed their mind and just told me to leave by the end of the month. It was 7 days away. They didn't speak to me ever since. When we met somewhere in town, they acted like they'd never seen me before. I have no freaking idea what I did wrong. My friends told me to grieve better after my boyfriend died. Some people are just terrible with dealing with the grieving. They're great for a little while, but at some point it just becomes an irritation whenever it's brought up. Grief gives no Fs. It'll hit you, fade, hit, fade, and then mostly settle down. Then 7 Christmases later, it shows up in a panic attack. It's different for everyone and often very different for every death. A quiet girl I made friends with would only sit with me in class just so she could go snitch about me to my ex-friends. She'd literally sit next to me for 1 or 2 classes, randomly, and then go and sit with them. I called her out on it after she came to sit next to me and told her, "Why do you even bother sitting with me when we just know you're just trying to get crap to talk about me with them? When I come back from the bathroom, you'd better go sit somewhere else." I was usually very quiet and that was the first time I'd stood up for myself. I had one friend who honestly wasn't my favorite person because she was really manipulative. But I never said anything bad about her. I found out later she had been crap-talking me to all of our mutual friends and telling them that I did horrible things that I'd never done. Ended up essentially being pushed out of that entire friend group and it ruined a lot of my high school experience. Village gossips. Personally, I'm just happy I'm not part of that miserable group anymore. As one wise man said, empty cans rattle the most. I had a best friend that I knew for 16 years. She got pregnant and her parents tried to kick her out. Her parents wanted her to get a termination, but she refused. One of our high school friends told me someone should push her down a flight of stairs. I told her that's a very bad idea and defended my best friend. The next day, the principal came by my class to ask me if I could attend a meeting about something important. If I didn't attend, I was going to be expelled. When I arrived at the meeting, our shared friend claimed I was going to shove my best friend down a flight of stairs. My best friend had believed her. We stopped talking after that. Oosh. Well, she might have eventually found out how reliable that other friend was if that's the one she chose to keep around. Stressful situation for her. I guess the lapse in judgment isn't down to cruelty. We, my husband and I, had a friend that we helped get back on his feet. Paid off some tickets he had, got his license reinstated, hooked him up with a solid connection for a reasonable, well-running car to replace his beater, and gave him a place to live and a job, automotive repair. He decided it was a better choice to tell all our customers we were overcharging them. Spoiler, we weren't, and he'd do the jobs cheaper if they'd bring it to him at his house. This was a short time after he moved out of our house after never repaying anything he owed us. Not that we'd asked. It really broke my heart. Some will take as much as they possibly can. Now he stops by occasionally like nothing ever happened. It's been years now, but some crap doesn't heal right. My wife said she needed some time to herself, so she went to stay at her mum's for a while. One day, I went to pick up my kids and walked in on her and my best friend doing the deed. Turns out it had been going on for a while and she knew him before she knew me, which I had no clue about. To clarify a few things. 1. When I said the affair had been going on for a while, I mean for several months before I found out. This was after my second son was born. I have no doubt as to whether my kids are actually my own or not. 2. Yes, they are now my ex-wife and ex-best friend. 3. This happened nearly 16 years ago now. It was a very dark period of my life, but I'm great now. I got 2 great kids out of the relationship. I wouldn't have met my wife if this hadn't happened. Also, I believe I'm a stronger person having gone through the whole ordeal. 4. Just know that if you're going through something horrible in your life and your heart and mind are broken, there is hope for things to get better. It just takes time. This would prompt me to conduct a DNA test on the kids. I hope the results don't break your heart. I was worried about that years ago, but both are now teenagers and clearly resemble myself and their mum. Had a good bud of mine who's the godfather of my son living with me and my wife. I travel a lot for work and was out of the country for about 6 months in the Middle East. Came back and found out she was preggers with twins and that they weren't mine. Best friend for 8 years, started sleeping with my girlfriend, later wife, a week after I introduced them. Took 6 years after my son was born to find out that they'd meet up a few times a month. Was a chance he wasn't mine. Luckily, he is. The problem is that the closeness you have to the person blinds you to the idea that they could do anything so terrible. My best friend is one of the smartest guys I know, always on top of it when someone is being the least bit cool or he's getting screwed. Then his wife swore that she must have gotten a transmissible disease from a toilet seat. He believed her and even got mad at his good friends for saying she could be lying until he caught her cheating 6 months later. Love makes fools of us all, I guess. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Years ago, when I did a health sciences undergraduate degree, most of the cohort was determined to get into medical school. Our medical school program mainly accepted students from only our competitive undergraduate course, due to subject prerequisites. We all knew each other and were friendly, hanging out together and forming study groups. Many of my friends were great. We shared tips, resources, practiced exams and interviews together, but there were a handful who really wanted to get into medical school, and since the program ranks applicants mainly based on undergraduate results, the better your friends perform, the lower your ranking is for selection. So near application time, some of us would head off to the university library to borrow our textbooks, to find chapters or page numbers that the lecturer mentioned would be on the exam. And they would be ripped out. You'd go and find another library copy of the textbook and that page would be ripped out too. All of them totally removed in a hurry. I didn't believe that someone from our cohort did it until interview practice began. Students began obtaining copies of the questions from previous years and lying when others asked if they had it. I saw someone give a terrible, awful interview answer, and the other student would give them glowing feedback and inform them they should say that, word for word, during the interview. It was a crap show, and a lot of relationships fell apart or were never the same again. In the UK, I've heard of similar practices for pupilages. Not sure if that's the right word, but trainee barristers. One girl got offered 2 places and was discussing with us which one to take, and her best friend left the room. Turned out she'd called one of them pretending to be her friend and calling to decline a place and recommend herself. Fortunately, they found out, but sadly this was apparently common enough for them to be familiar with this kind of scam. I booked a table for 6 people to watch a sports event at a bar. I told them so. All 5 friends said, "Okay, we'll be there." No one shows up or even has the decency to call or text that they weren't coming. This just happened to my 11-year-old sister, BBBS, and I was heartbroken for her. She had a slumber party planned with about 4 friends and she'd been talking about it for over a month. Halloween is her favorite, and she had all these cute, not too scary slumber party plans and crafts we'd made a couple of weeks ahead of time that had truth or dares in them. None of them came. They all forgot to tell their parents. I suggested maybe next year she makes paper invitations that her friends can give their parents so they for sure know about it. Turns out that's exactly what she did, and they still messed it up somehow. Ugh. My friend told me they weren't doing anything for their birthday. On the day of their birthday, photos appeared on Facebook of them out with the rest of our friends. They're not my friends anymore. Frick, man. One of my most painful memories from elementary school was when I saw one of my friends showing other kids pictures from her birthday party that happened the weekend prior. Almost all of my good friends were there having a blast with her, except me, obviously. She seemed remorseful when she realized that she forgot to invite me, but we were never as close after that, and we were pretty good friends with each other, too. A woman I thought was my friend. We worked together for years and our kids were friends. I helped her and her husband out when he was having mental health problems. She was in my sister's wedding party, appeared in court as a witness for my ex-wife in her bid to gain full custody. Thankfully, she failed and I now have custody of my kids. I haven't spoken to my friend since. A guy who seemed like a good mate when it was just us, and then as soon as there was someone else or a group, he took the mickey out of me and tried to make me the butt of all his jokes. Even worse if there were girls around. After a while, I called him out on it and he was just like, "Dude, it's just a joke." But I was done with him after that. I saw him randomly earlier this year after years of no contact, and it was amicable, and we caught up a bit on how we were getting on with our own lives. And while he's grown up and become a bit more grounded, there's been no intention of rebuilding a bridge. I think if I ever met someone that has that side to their personality, I'd drop them like a hot potato. I think we all have at least one nasty experience with people like this growing up. Teens are gnarly. I hope that these experiences with grown adults are fewer and further between. My D-bag of a brother did this to his best friend of all time. After about 6 years of this, his friend couldn't stand it anymore and cut my brother off. My brother is so arrogant he still can't see the problem. Why didn't he just keep being my victim? That's the way things were. It was his place. I don't get it. In 2014, I woke up January 1st in horrible pain. I ended up needing an emergency surgery to remove my gallbladder. I was a single mum to 2 kids under 5 and had just moved back to my hometown after living out of state. We'd had to leave a really crappy living situation and had only been back about a month, and I hadn't found a job at that point. I'd had a really close family friend who had been living with me before I'd moved back, and he ended up homeless, so I bought him an $80 bus ticket and got him back to our hometown and let him stay with me for a few days. He quickly found another place to stay, but we'd invited him to my youngest son's 2nd birthday, which is the 6th of January. I was like 4 days out from surgery at this point and could barely make it down the stairs at this point, so he offered to go and pick up pizza and cake for my son and me. We didn't have a huge party or anything. I was on food stamps and had cash assistance, since my son's dad was not involved at all and he didn't pay child support. Even so, I offered for him to get himself a small pizza to take back to the girl he was staying with, since her and her kids couldn't make it over. So the party goes great and everyone has a good time, especially both my kids. A few days later, my grandma was going to do grocery shopping for me, so I go to get my card and realize it's not there. I never got it back from that guy, and I forgot he had it since I was on pain meds from surgery. I tried calling him like 5 times and he didn't answer, so I got to my account online to check my balance and he took everything. I had like $600 in cash, paid my rent and brought my kids the things they needed, and then I had about $750 in food stamps. All of it was gone. He let the girl he was staying with convince him to steal the money from me. I'd only used the money to buy the bus ticket and the pizza and cake for my son since I'd been in hospital for the first 4 days of the year, and only home for 2 after that. It's still to this day the most intentionally messed up thing anyone's ever done to me, mostly because he was such a huge FU to my kids. Like, who steals from a single mum recovering from a life-saving surgery on her kid's birthday? Especially after I helped him, like holy crap. Growing up in the same church and met my friend and her family when I was 14. We grew up together, hung out, and our families would be together all the time. Fast forward many years and I'm dating a guy that I fell in love with for almost 3 years at the time. He went to North Dakota to the oil fields for work. I went to visit him and could tell something was off a bit. Took the train from my town to Williston, 22 hours to get there. Visited him for 5 days and on the last day he gets up and goes to the shower. I grab his phone. We had an open policy with each other that either could be on each other's phones. I found the emails between my friend and him. My family still hangs out with her family and her. I refuse to be around or speak to her. My best friend since 4th grade, called her my soul sister. I genuinely was so grateful to have what I thought our friendship was. She fell on hard times and got weirdly religious and stopped working while going to a private university. I was always there for her, shoulder to cry on, visited her all the time because she didn't have any friends and I knew she was lonely. I helped her with groceries and rent, helped her family out. One day she came over, and after buying her groceries, she told me that a higher power had been telling her to cut me off for 2 years and she had to listen. Now she wants to be friends again. It's a hard nope from me, dog. I had some friends who were always talking crap about me. Found out from another good friend. And one day, I came to school in my brand new jeans that cost around €150, and they put glue on my chair while I was in the bathroom. I sat on it. I asked which of them did it, and none of them said a word. We went to the principal's office, and these pieces of crap had the gall to say that I put it there to get them in trouble. Their parents were called, and I earned around €200 for a new pair of jeans. In 7th grade, she wrote a 10-page letter on all the reasons I should self-delete, and had all but one of my friends sign an agreement after I confided in her that I felt like something was wrong with me. Early undiagnosed depression, go figure. The day she gave it to me was arguably the worst day of my life at that point because my parents had told my sister and I that they were considering divorce and my grandmother had died. My parents ended up solving their issues and are happier than ever. I've been in therapy for a while and it's had wonderful results along with a pretty good mood stabilizer. I'm happier and healthier than I've ever been, and honestly the best thing for me was to completely cut her out of my life. Everyone that signed an agreement has long since cut contact with her and apologized to me. Just happened today, actually. I threw a housewarming party for myself and invited about 20 people over. It's been 5.5 hours and no one has shown up or bothered to call. I specified no gifts and supplied about $250 worth of food and drinks that'll go to waste now. My best friend begged my girlfriend to go south of the border on him. That was pretty brutal. F you, Ben. A friend stole my Mortal Kombat 2 strategy guide in 3rd grade. I never forgave him. Eat crap, Cameron, doo-doo head. Friend was really close with me and my girlfriend. Friend was my girlfriend's confidant while we were dating. I trusted that friend because he was a good guy up to that point. Friend was constantly pinning her against me and making bigger deals out of small stuff, saying I was mistreating her by not being with her constantly because I was working a full-time job while in school. The girlfriend cheated on me with her friend. He tried to turn everyone against me. The only person who still associates with that friend is the girlfriend, and they're getting married in the next few months. What was one rule at your office that ruined everything? I worked for a place that did RMA repairs on PCs. Most of our clients were businesses like hospitals and factories. Anyway, as I was touring the workshop during my orientation, the guy taking me around took me to the QA department. Once all builds or repairs were made, they were sent to the QA department for a final inspection before going out to the customer. The guy jokingly said, "We used to pay the QI guys bonuses for every mistake they found on the build." I started laughing. The only problem was it wasn't a joke. They actually paid bonuses to the QA people who found mistakes on builds. For anyone not familiar with the internal workings of a PC, it could take less than 3 seconds to completely render a computer inoperable. Hell, you could loosen a connection just by inspecting it. Luckily, that policy ended before I was hired. I mean, can you imagine giving someone a bonus for finding screw-ups when it would take almost no effort to make a screw-up and then claim you found it? New manager got rid of the sofa in the break room so people couldn't nap in their hour-long lunch break. No one was oversleeping or taking the mickey with it, but it was a good option to have on a tough day. A guy who liked green herbs started sleeping in other places, including in between the walls in the warehouse. To clarify where he'd go, we'd find him in between the walls and shelves. It was a DIY store that had been something else years before, so there were random partition walls and oddly laid out shelving units everywhere. A real crap show of a store layout. He had quite a few places to hide in and to nap. That's when we started losing him and couldn't find him as he'd go into a deeper sleep and was less likely to be disturbed. He didn't lose his job somehow. That place had a hard time hiring. We got a new manager for our office. She was an outside hire and was trying to prove herself quickly, and she was obsessed with efficiency. So her first week here, she sent us out this very rudely worded email about employees eating at our desks. We have a very small break area, 4 tables, and we have about 300 employees here, and that we all had to stop eating at our desks because it was not efficient to eat and try to work at the same time. Through a coordinated effort by some of the more sassy people at the office, they all had their lunches at the same time and filled the break room with about 90 people. Elbow to elbow, and they all ate standing up. Literally the next day after that happened, she sent out a follow-up email saying that we could eat at our desks, but she advised us to take a break from our work from time to time. It was pretty funny. Good old malicious compliance. There's nothing like it. Whether it's sticking it to obnoxious customers or your superiors, it brings me such joy. At a former job, software development, there was a foosball table. People would play reasonably often, but just one game to take a break. One day, management came down to the software engineering floor and saw people playing foosball in the middle of the afternoon. They declared no foosball until 4:30 p.m. That ended up making it so that everybody knew when there would be other people wanting to play foosball, so it was much easier to find somebody willing to play and significantly increased the amount of foosball played at work. I'm a programmer. On a previous job, the developers and teams were measured by the number of feature requests that they completed. We figured out how to subdivide everything to blow it up into the maximum number of feature requests possible. A manager might request a new report. We set up separate feature tickets for Create Button, Make Button Blue, Make Button Respond when clicked, Implement Business Logic, Display Results in Grid, Allow sorting of grid, and so on. We'd subdivide a one-day task into 20 one-hour tasks. Our management loved it. Our team looked 20 times as productive despite deliberately slowing ourselves down with red tape. Ugh, so accurate it hurts. Especially the management loved it part. Malicious compliance mixed with scope creep. My company, as part of its alcohol policy, said you shouldn't drink for at least 4 hours before coming to work. When engineers got called about production problems over the weekend, they'd all just had a beer, but could be there in about 4 or 5 hours. I'm a flight attendant. Rule is we can't drink 8 hours before our shift. Sometimes the company will call you after you've just done working to do more flying as they don't have anyone else. Or we might have an extra long overnight, as in get into whichever city, say at around 11 p.m. Monday, and not leave until 6 a.m. Wednesday. Sometimes they'll call us out to work some short flights on that Tuesday that we aren't working. All you have to do is answer the phone and say you just had a drink and then you don't have to work. An insane amount of time and hand-wringing went into my office's dress code policy. When the final draft was ultimately released, every department head had a valid reason why their staff should be exempted. So the policy wound up only affecting myself and the guy that insisted on making the policy. I violate this policy on a daily basis. I used to work for a production company that employed a lot of really skilled, award-winning editors. There were producers and executives and directors, but the real money makers, the people who really made the company, were the editors, so the company was basically centered around them. The executives would always order in food for the editors, and the editors would usually eat in their offices while doing their thing. One day, the execs decided to cut paid lunches to save money. The editors all thought this was a jerk move, so they'd go out for lunch and sometimes stay out for like 3 hours. There was nothing the company could do, really, because these editors were top of their game, and if Warner Bros. Heard that the editors they always used had left, they might leave too. So the company couldn't do anything. They saved maybe $15 per person per day, but lost like 4 hours per person per day as well. When trimming a budget, you may want to remove things that are the most expensive and provide the least noticeable benefit. So of course, the first thing to always go is creature comforts, which cost almost nothing and have immense impact on quality of life. I'm perpetually amazed at many companies' existence. You're assuming they want to remove the things that make sense to remove. What actually happens is they remove the easiest things to remove, basically all the low-effort, low-capital, and low-time investment things. What's the easiest thing a manager could possibly do to save money? Simply stop buying lunches for people. It takes one email and the manager can claim $50,000 annual savings on day one to their bosses. This is why layoffs that end up hurting the company financially occur. Labor is the easiest go-to when you have to cut costs quickly. Companies are starting to realize this in manufacturing at least, and have been focusing on decreasing specific costs rather than fixed. Depends on your industry though. Some have very low fixed labor costs, like 5 to 10%, whilst others can be higher than 50%. In the 5 to 10% cases, it might actually save your company money to go and hire more people, but many people are very reluctant to do so. My old job had a draconian attendance policy in which if you were a second late, you got a half-point demerit. If you were an hour late, you got that same half-point demerit, with certain amounts of demerits meaning different kinds of warnings or termination. In addition to making for some of the most anxiety-filled employees that made dumb decisions to speed through snowstorms, it also meant if you got stuck in a traffic jam, you might as well just take your time, stop for gas, and get breakfast. The same place also had a similar policy that assured the plague spread through the whole place. Say you came into work at 7. By 9 a.m., you've got a fever and full-blown flu symptoms. If you clock out then, you get a whole point demerit. But if you sit there coughing and shivering and infecting your coworkers for another 2 hours, till your shift was half over, you only got a half-point demerit. The sickness policy is shockingly dumb. If everyone gets sick because one person can't leave, then productivity goes down a huge amount, if not shutting down operations entirely until enough people are healthy again. I'm surprised that wasn't revoked after the first time, but some managers can't manage anything. As someone who used to work in hospitality, where when you got sick you'd be asked to come in anyway because nobody else could replace you, I can tell you what a relief it is to now work in a situation where I can choose to take a sick day or two, or just power through in our post-pandemic work-from-home environment. My dad was a corpsman with the Marines doing high desert training in the Mojave. They had a big problem with unidentified snake bites. People would get bit but not identify the snake, so it was hard to find the right antidote. So my dad got all the Marines in a room and said, "If you get bit by a snake, bring it back here so we can identify it." Not even a full week later, they had to alter the wording a bit because a Marine was bit by a rattlesnake and decided to bring it back without killing it. This man had carried the snake all the way back to base alive, and the snake decided to let him know exactly how he felt about that by repeatedly biting his arm the entire time. Needless to say, that Marine went home and they made sure to hold another meeting where they told everyone to kill the snake, then bring it back. In the end, he kept the arm. They got him to the base hospital in roughly 50 minutes and gave him antivenom. He was out for 6 weeks. This was in 1995 at 29 Palms. He calls it 29 Stumps. 4th Marine Division, Reservist Marines out of Buffalo, New York. My work just recently tried to implement a new attendance policy that didn't last 24 hours. They changed it so that after 2 unexcused absences in a year, you were fired. An unexcused absence is any absence or tardiness. I think you were allowed 4 tardies. When you didn't give your boss more than 24 hours notice. Lock the doors on the HR person that came up with that. Add it to their one previous absence. Fire them, fix the policy, rehire them to teach them a lesson. Don't do anything unless directed by your boss. Any deviation from this will result in write-up and termination. This was a very literal directive from upper management that took place after an office incident. Our work is very fluid and our team alone contained 20 people. Needless to say, productivity hit unfounded lows. Yep, we had this. We couldn't even ask our managers if there was any work to be done. They just emailed us with work every hour. I ended up finishing it in like 10 minutes of the email and was bored out of my brain for the majority of the day. This is literally a labor strategy to have a strike without leaving the workplace open for scabs. And to prevent retaliation from the bosses. It's called work to rule or a rulebook slowdown. I work for a labor union representing airport catering workers, and this is a strategy we've used in the past with great success. The rules and procedures in place with the company and the unsafe, unsanitary rules the workers are expected to follow are two very different things. So we start implementing safety first days. The workers show up to work as normal and then spend the day following every company procedure to the letter. Productivity plummets, deadlines aren't met, and flights on major airlines leave without in-flight meals. The flyers get upset with the airline gets upset with the airport gets upset with the catering company, and the managers responsible for the poor working conditions are set directly in the crosshairs. It's been very effective. I worked for a software company that routed all sales that came to under $100,000 to inside sales, while larger orders went to outside sales teams that worked directly with the customers. This lasted until one of the inside sales guys convinced the customer that they didn't need the $2 million software and only the $100,000 upgrade. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. At one job, you could schedule vacation and give it back if your plans changed. One guy would take 2 weeks off, wait until the schedule was made for that month, then give it back. Since the schedule assumed he wasn't going to be there, he'd make up his own shifts since he was extra. This would lead to him working 11/7, showing up at 2, taking lunch, working from 4 to 6, and leaving early. He'd do this 3 or 4 times per year. My work used to have vacation and sick leave as 2 separate things. 2 years ago, they created new paid time off that merged sick leave and vacation, but everyone got the same amount of paid time off as their old vacation time. So tons of people just started coming to work sick so they wouldn't waste their vacation time. Now there are tons of people sick all of the time. Overtime is paid in free time instead of money. 3 people quit so far, more people planning to. No new hires to be found. It's probably just a matter of time before this shop closes down. My old job did something similar, but for every hour of work, you got 1 hour of paid leave, so it was better for new parents that could do extra work the days they could, and then get to leave for emergencies and still be paid. People disliked the idea at first until they found out they could work 4 days per week for only 2 hours of extra work per day. We started finding what we called Weekend Wednesday. That way we had a day off in the middle of the week and worked only 2 days in a row. I worked as a graphic designer, by the way, so as long as we were finished on deadline, the boss didn't care. Yep, working on the basis of finished objectives is a terrific way to motivate creative work. I speak from experience, and the better you understand the capacity of your workers, the more efficient objectives you can set. We created this thing called the safety bonus. It was one of 4 possible bonuses people could get. The original version of it said that anyone that was accident-free would get a bonus, so people stopped reporting their accidents. We had to rework it to an accident bonus causing property damage. We set up another safety award for those who filed their safety reports in a timely manner with clear print and full details. IT department changed how work is given out and time is accounted for. Had to fill out daily timesheets that accounted for every 15-minute section of time with a summary of what you've worked on. Anyone that needed IT help had to go through one person. The problem is that the one person giving out work had no clue who had what skills. The timesheets were a waste, we had to stop and report what we were working on. Classic micromanagement. Within months, the entire IT staff left except for one guy. Don't micromanage when the job market is full of other jobs. I worked at a company that blocked every single website except for the one that we used for work. They then hired a new cleaning lady who couldn't speak English. We tried to look up a Spanish to English dictionary, but it was all blocked. This was pre-smartphone as well, so basically she just hung out all day since nobody knew what to have her do or even where the supplies were kept. I work for a large telecom corporation. Corporate HR instituted a new mobile phone and tablet policy for its field techs, which basically stated no electronic devices are to be in the cab of our vehicles. Not even if you're a passenger. When corporate HR sets the rules, they're followed. We even had local supervisors searching the trucks as we left the shop. So no biggie, we follow the rules. As time goes on, supervisors and dispatch get increasingly frustrated that they can't get a hold of their field techs. Go figure. This policy lasted dang near 6 months before they scrapped it. I've got to say it was a glorious 6 months. So peaceful. I was stationed aboard the USS Harry S. Truman from 02 to 05. At one point during the deployment, the Capitan found a candy wrapper in a P-way. What's the obvious solution to finding trash? G-Dunk, snacks and sodas from vending machines were only to be consumed on the mess deck. Anyone caught eating candy anywhere else on the ship would be put on report. Now, it's not like we organized a boycott, but the only reason to buy something from the vending machines would be to eat it elsewhere. If you're going to eat on the mess deck, might as well hit a chow line. 3 days of zero sales from the machines, and the supply officer talked some sense into the captain. I work in a manufacturing facility and wanted my shop supervisors to be more engaging with the operators. The supervisors had a bad habit of paging operators to the blue room, their office, to answer questions. This is obviously not ideal because it pulls an operator off the line and it impacts our efficiency. I sat the supervisors down and explained to them the situation and made it clear I don't want them paging anyone to the blue room anymore. They all nodded their heads and seemed to be agreeing and understanding. Now they page operators to the supervisor office. Work added the option to clock in or out from a mobile app. It lasted maybe 2 weeks. I worked for a tuxedo chain in the US Midwest for years. During prom season a few years back, a new policy in how we answered the phones came through. The greeting was, "Thank you for calling, company name, sales and rental, suits and tuxedos, where we can save you some cha-ching on your prom tuxedo today." Now, say that out loud a few times and realize how much bloody time it takes to say it on the phone each time it rings, all day, every day. Several of us senior managers refused to say it, 1 because it sounded stupid, and 2 because it took an eternity to say and we'd often get interrupted halfway through. Our office would call each store, 16 locations, and make sure you were saying it, and then threatened to fire us if we didn't. Needless to say, we took our defense to the owner of the company and he nixed it pretty quickly. Not quite a workplace, but around 2009 or 10, my city implemented new water-saving laws that said you could only water your lawns on Tuesdays and Thursdays and started enforcing fines on anyone watering their lawn not on the approved days. Well, summer turns to fall, the rainy season hits, and water mains across the city suddenly started bursting. Whatever could be causing this mass failure of our water infrastructure? Local university did a study, and sure enough, the Tuesday and Thursday watering rule had put a massive strain on the water mains and sewer lines and caused them to fail across town. The city's attempt to save water backfired with mass flooding and expensive repairs. At the advice of the university, they switched it to odd numbers water Monday to Wednesday, even numbers water Tuesday, Thursday. It's several years later and they're still repairing the damage in places. We had a new manager that decided everyone had to be in at 9 a.m. and couldn't understand why IT were allowed to come in late. So all came in at 9 a.m. and stopped working evenings and weekends, which meant customer-facing servers being out all weekend because we couldn't be around to fix them. That guy was an idiot though. He told our best salesman to his face he thought he was overpaid, so the salesman promptly resigned, which probably cost the company more than his annual salary in lost sales. Why do guys like this always seem to end up in office management? Is it nepotism? It's nepotism, isn't it? Surely their amount of crazy wrongness can't get through a serious series of interviews. Oh, who am I kidding? Worked at a branch of a credit union. We had to recognize our workers whenever they did something good. Manager made us do this with a stuffed animal whale as if to say, "Whale done." I know. Ugh, like we were kids. Well, we decided to act like children since we were already being treated as such, so 2 weeks later our manager found the whale in the back room, hanging from an extension cord. We have a policy here that any expenditure over $500 must be pre-approved via a series of forms explaining why the thing is needed, with no exceptions. The forms are fairly annoying to fill out, change all the time, and it takes the people who review them quite a while to actually approve or deny your spending. So we all do our damnedest to keep purchases under $500. It's common practice to take one big purchase and just split it into several smaller ones to save the effort of filling out the paperwork. Same money spent, no forms filed. The no exceptions part is also somewhat problematic since it snags routine stuff like printer toner and paper. So we have to waste time filling out the form and they have to waste time reviewing and approving it. I worked at a place that very generously gave us full pay if we missed more than 3 scheduled days in a row due to sickness. The end result was what we called 72-hour flu. Literally no one ever called in for 1 day or 2. If someone was out sick, you could count on seeing them in 3 days' time. As a bit of a background, at my job there are unionized field workers and non-union office workers. I'm one of the latter. Recently, the union guys got a new rule where they're allowed to leave 30 minutes early if they don't take a lunch break. This backfired in 2 ways. First, all of the union guys leave 30 minutes early. It wouldn't really be an issue if some of them stayed until the normal time, but now when something needs to get down during the last 30 minutes of our normal hours, it pretty much ends up being overtime for someone every time. Second, since the union guys don't come back to the building for lunch anymore to clock out, it's been a lot more annoying to coordinate tasks with them if you need them to do something else in the second half of the day. It's little stuff, but it's definitely impacted productivity. Ironically, they still take a lunch break, they just try to pass it off as one of their union-mandated 15-minute breaks. My office is next to the personnel directors, and I hear him have to chew someone out over this almost daily. It's like those guys don't realize that there's a GPS in their truck that shows they were at Taco Bell for 30 minutes. They banned the word triggered, so everyone started saying activated. Get air quality monitoring for any project involving asbestos material. The problem is that we have a lot of projects which involve only a few holes drilled to mount a piece of equipment, and there's already a simple and cheap method which we know negates the risk of asbestos getting released. Forcing us to do air monitoring effectively doubles the cost of those products. It didn't take them long for that policy to get reversed. I worked for a company that met every single issue with a threat of gross misconduct. For those who don't know, gross misconduct gives the company the right to dismiss staff without notice, but that doesn't mean that you can just declare gross misconduct for everything and get out of your obligations. The best one I can remember was when they were having problems with lorries parking in the road outside and tried to get the council to make it no parking. The council duly came and took a look and noted that several cars belonging to employees were parked on the road, so, you guessed it, parking in the road, off the company's property, and perfectly legally was to be treated as a gross misconduct. There were many other examples, probably one a month, none of which were ever executed. It got so that the whole thing became a joke and nobody took anything they said seriously. What happens to people after they win long-term prizes in competitions? A neighbor won $500 a week for life. He quit his job, divorced his wife, and moved into a small apartment across town where the rent was cheap, and now he almost never leaves. He has everything delivered to his house from Amazon. Living the dream. My older cousin won $5,000 a month for life. It ruined him. He got all paranoid about people only wanting to be around him because he had money. We live in a rural, fairly low-wage area, so that's a lot of money to some people. If you ever mentioned it to him, he just stopped talking to you. He's pretty much a loner now with almost nothing to show for it. That's kinda scary. Why doesn't he move? This is where his mother lives, and he's not the type to venture out into the world. One of my friends won a $5,000 a week for life prize in the New York lottery a few years back. It's actually only for 40 years, but that's plenty of time to save for retirement and live a long, happy life. He's doing well because he isn't acting like a lotto winner. It's as if it was the social security he was receiving previously. He's disabled. He still has his friends, too. It pretty much went as best as possible. I once won a year of free groceries. They gave me 52 $100 gift cards to use any way I wanted. I was single and ate and drank like a gosh darn king that year. Nobody went hungry when I was around. I won free toilet paper for a family for life, which is $62 a month. I give them to a homeless shelter. Do you give it to them because it's full of bums? Web developer here. I made a website for a local pizza chain. The owner paid me, then asked for support. I gave him a price, $75 an hour, and he suggested free pizza for life instead. I took it. I've enjoyed excellent quality free pizza about 10 times since 2006. He's had me do about an hour's worth of maintenance. I just walk into one of his stores, order a pie, and when they ask for payment, I say, "Call Tom." They do, they talk, and then they hand me the pizza. It's kind of cool, actually. It sounds like it's only free pizza for you for Tom's life. Once he dies, they'll have no way to confirm it's free. Well, that story was written 9 years ago, so I'm not sure if Tom's pizza chain is still going. Honestly, good on the developer for not fully taking advantage of the place. I won free movies from Blockbuster for a year. It ended up only being one rental per week. After a couple of weeks, I realized it was just a coupon for one free rental and I used it as often as I needed. Eventually, I modded my original Xbox and started renting multiple games a day and copying them to my hard drive. I killed the Blockbuster. I once won a year's supply of calendars from a local gift shop. They gave me one calendar worth $2.99. That's frickin' brilliant. I got, quote, free pizza for a year. 12 pizzas. I got 12 pizzas. It was about a month ago and I've used around 4 of them already. It's not gonna last a year. I got free Oreos for life. I won an Oreo stacking contest when I was 10. I'm 21 now and glad to say that I don't have diabetes. I won free bagels from a bagel shop for a year. It was good for 13 bagels, 2 loaves of bread, and 2 tubs of cream cheese and spread each month. I tried 3 different locations and none of the managers believed that the voucher I won was legitimate at their store. They all gave me different reasons for why they wouldn't accept my voucher. Okay, this one makes me angry. Like, what the frick? They probably throw out more spoiled product than that every day and they won't honor your damn coupon? I won a year's supply of dog food when I was 10 and tried to convince my mum that it was the perfect time to finally get a dog, as it must be a sign. We didn't get a dog. I gave the vouchers to my neighbor. My parents were in the first 50 people at a new car wash place and got a free car wash for life. I'm convinced your parents are unknowingly partaking in a laundering scheme. The car wash is a front to launder money, but they need to make it look like people use the car wash in order to report high cash incomes. So they give out vouchers for free car washes to make it look like they have a lot of customers, but really they're just stuffing the registers with dirty substance money. Apparently, I made a Breaking Bad reference, but I haven't got that far yet. I'm only on season 2. Thanks for the spoilers. I entered a radio competition in the 90s for free music every month for a year. I didn't win that, but I won the consolation prize, which was a copy of Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. We already had a copy of Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, by the way. A rep from the station told me they'd mail it out on the 15th. Well, it arrived, but it never stopped arriving. On the 15th of every month, a copy of Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill would show up in the mail. This happened till we had about 6 copies of Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. I called and asked the radio station if they could send something else besides Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, but they did not. They just corrected their error. Later that year, my sister got a birthday present from one of her friends. When she opened it, it was a copy of Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. I won free iced coffees for a year from Dunkin' Donuts, but instead they sent $500 in gift cards. I'm not mad. Interestingly enough, my girlfriend also won the exact same contest. 3-day contest, and she won the first day and I won the third and final day. 1 free scoop of ice cream a week from the local ice cream place. This was for winning an ice cream eating contest. Yum! A family friend frantically brought a scratch off while fleeing a road rage driver. She was telling the clerk to call the police on a parked car that had followed her to the gas station. She now gets $3,000 a week and works because she wants to, not because she has to. Every gift she gives now comes with a lotto ticket. Last week I went in to buy a specific lottery number for like $2, but then the guy ended up saying something that I couldn't quite hear, that I agreed to. He printed me off like one of every lotto ticket. It cost me over $20. I was positive that I would win though, because I never intended on buying the ticket, and that's exactly when I feel like you'd have the highest chance. I lost it all. £40,000 per year for life on a £10 National Lottery scratch card. It was that or $1 million up front. I just turned 21 at the time, so my dad made me take the annuity because I just spunk the $1 million in a couple of years left to my own devices. Now it's good. I take care of my mortgage every year, so my salary is just for me and my family. We get a nice couple of holidays a year, but we don't live to excess. 27 years old now, so we'll see if I reach over $1 million over the next 40 or 50 or 60 years. My friend won free lunch for a year at a school fundraiser, but he had to enter in his account number so they could at least document it. He was promptly given a limit on how much he could have. My neighbor won $1,000 a week for life on a lottery scratch-off ticket. I haven't seen him around recently, but he lived at his childhood home with his parents for a while and owned 2 Corvettes. He also loved dogs and would always stop me to pet my dog when I would walk by. He was always a nice guy who seemed to be smart with his winnings. I won a year of free Uber, the on-demand car service for those unaware, for pretty much all of 2014. I used it a lot, to and from work, the airport, in many different cities, took my friends out to the bars, to the beach, anywhere, met a lot of interesting drivers. Paid taxes on it this year because it counted as income, but it was definitely worth it. The contest was at a college bowl game that Uber sponsored. I had to catch the most passes in 35 seconds, which were thrown to me from NFL WR Tavern Austin. I beat my opponent by 1 catch. I received a fixed amount of Uber credit per month, so it was actual cash value that counted as income. Hence I received a $10.99 MISC. However, I was glad to pay the tax considering the value I received. The narrator wonders if you'd be taxed regardless of how much you actually used it if you're just being given credit per month. I guess you could just make a point of taking an Uber everywhere. Screw fitness and fresh air. I won a year's supply of Nestlé sweets and chocolates in a quiz on the radio when Toy Story 2 came out. You had to answer 3 questions about Toy Story, then you got entered into a draw to either go to space camp in Cape Canaveral or cowboy camp in Arizona. But you got the chocolate for just getting on the radio. I got the 3 questions right, but some other kid won the draw. Then the chocolate just arrived in one big shipment. Huge boxes of it. It was literally incredible. Then my mum made me bring it into school and share it out amongst everyone in my year. A few kilos of chocolate, and I hardly saw any of it. Ungrateful little jerks ate it all in minutes. I'm still bitter. My family won free KFC for a year when I was in the 8th grade. We got a 30-piece family bucket each month, but had to pay for everything else. It was pretty decent. A grocery store chain had a "Win a year's worth of bananas" contest a couple of years ago. I had to watch a video about how they store their bananas and then answer a question. I thought, what the hell, my kid loves bananas, and entered. And I won. They sent me a gift card for the equivalent of a year's worth of bananas. $300. We spent most of it on meat. Totally worth it. I feel like maybe you won because you were the only one who entered. The sister of my friend won a car when she got a special Oreo in a packet. You could win different prizes depending on what your special Oreo said, like trip or car or whatever. Nabisco came to our school, we had a big pep rally thing, they gave the girl, who was like 13, a new VW Beetle filled with packages of Oreos. Everyone at the school got a pack of double stuff Oreos. They'd just come out. It was awesome. The girl's parents sold the car and started a college fund. Anyone who went around to visit got tons of free Oreos. I think they eventually just donated hundreds of packets to a food bank. That's a pretty awesome story. Most people who win cars full of food just end up in a car crash and with diabetes. Free Chick-fil-A for a year. Just had to be one of the first 100 people at a new store. It's pretty good. Yes, they do this at every Chick-fil-A, and no, I'm not in your city. I read an article for college about lottery winners in Sweden, and gosh darn does it sound difficult on your social life. Friends of the winners felt like if they were buying food and looking for deals, or being sensible with their money, that they should relax and not worry too much. You have loads of money. Also, that the winners should pay for the meals and drinks just because they were better off. But the kicker was, when the lottery winners spent too much on something or did anything out of the ordinary with the winnings, the friends told them not to be careless with the money and to smarten up. Basically, a vicious circle for the winners where they were doomed if they do and doomed if they don't. Any similar experiences for lotto winners out there? Simple solution, just make sure you don't have any friends. I'm almost there. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Every now and then I get lucky enough to be the 1 millionth visitor to a website. I'm still waiting to collect around 30 iPads. I have a friend who won the Set for Life Scratch and Win Lotto. You get $1,000 a week, tax-free for 25 years. So yeah, about $52,000 per year. It's a 1 in 880,000 chance to win. He was offered a lump sum of $1 million, $300,000 less than the total prize over time, and he turned that down. He went to school for a few years until he was basically sick of it all. These days, he just spends his time drawing anime. He doesn't leave his house. He doesn't want to hang out with anyone. And he seems to just whittle away his money on impulse Amazon purchases. He has another 15 years or so worth of the lottery. He's been unemployed for the last 10 years. When he runs out of money, everyone pretty much sees that he will be royally screwed. My grandfather won the lottery for $2 million. He died 2 years later to prostate cancer. My mum was the recipient for the remaining 18 years of $80,000 a year after taxes. That time period has now expired. When I was younger, my brother won a 7-Up bottle cap contest which either allowed you to appear on TV or get a pair of 7-Up boxers. He chose the boxers. Good choice. TV is for suckers. I won the boxers too and they never came in. I just frickin' remembered right now. Not me, but my brother was hit by a car when he was 7 and my parents had a killer insurance policy on him. He gets $7,000 a month for the rest of his life and got $1.2 million when he was 25. Since he was 15, he's been addicted to smack, been in jail 6 times for violent crimes, one of which very nearly killed a guy, and has 5 children with 5 different mothers. Because of the kids, he pays almost all of his settlement money in child support every month and has to work as a dishwasher at a crappy diner to get by. The $1.2 million was spent long ago on substances, cars he destroyed, and parties he threw for his friends. A friend of an acquaintance won $2,000 a week for 20 years or something. He spends it mostly on smack. His smack dealer is the real winner. No taxes at all. In middle school, I was in a science class that won a contest for free M&Ms. The teacher got all of our information to make sure we all got our share after it got sorted out. As it was approaching summer break, none of us ever got our M&Ms, and I can only assume the teacher ate them all himself and won himself some diabetes. Years after World War II, the German government began paying reparations of sorts to victims' families for the atrocities that had befallen certain people. I don't know what it used to be, but once a year we get something like $14 in the mail. It's a bit odd. I'm not sure this can be considered a win on balance given what your family had to go through to be awarded this $14 per year. Good lord. Also, apparently the German government pays out billions per year this way in total. Who knew? I won free Applebee's for a year, which turned out to be $600 in gift cards. Kinda lame, spent most of it on beer. Free beer is never lame, young grasshopper. I mean, it's better than the food at Applebee's. You remember when Snapple had that Win Nothing promotion? I was with my girlfriend at a restaurant and opened one. Under the cap it said, "You win, no thirst." I thought to myself, duh, I'm drinking one right now. I thought it was a gag. Tossed the bottle and went home. But for some reason, it bugged me. I looked it up online and sure enough, I'd won a lifetime supply of Snapple. And my clueless butt threw away that cap. If it makes you feel any better, I threw away a nice LCD-sized screen in the McDonald's trash. It was a World Cup promotion in Germany in 2006. You had to have 2 tickets. One had the left half, the other had the right half. I had one half and the new ticket was the other half. I thought it was the same half I had, so I pitched it. It wasn't the same half. I still have the other half of the winning pair sitting on my bookshelf to remind me of the one and only time I ever won anything, and I threw it away. Years ago, M&Ms were having a contest where you could win something like $10,000 a year for the rest of your life if you opened a special pack of M&Ms. I was at work one day, opened a pack of peanut M&Ms at my desk. They had bits of other color shells stuck to the outside of all the candies. I looked at them, thought to myself, this is weird, and then ate them and threw the package away. In the next couple of days, I saw a commercial letting me know I'd screwed myself out of some serious cash. The girl sat across from me thought it was hilarious. My question is, did I lose my one chance at something glorious, or is there something still in the cards for me? I remember there being an M&M's contest when I was a kid, where if you found one grey M&M in your bag, you would win some astronomical amount of money, or something like that. My brother and I informed our dad, and the 3 of us promptly went to the corner store to pick up a couple of bags. We were chowing down on our M&Ms and keeping a sharp eye out for any grey pieces. Suddenly, my dad holds one up and says, "Oh look, a grey one." My brother and I promptly lose our minds until Dad goes, looks pretty tasty though. He pops it into his mouth. The sound of the grey M&M crunching between his teeth sounds distinctly like the shattering of our dreams. His maniacal cackling was drowned out by our distraught wails. Turns out if you suck the food coloring off the brown M&Ms, they turn grey. Monster Energy was having a competition at my college, and they were for some reason having it at the new dorms that hadn't opened yet. Well, I happened to be touring the dorms on room selection day and had a nice conversation with the guys at the table about Fallout 3, which had come out 5 months prior. Because I killed their loneliness, they gave me about 100 entries into a contest for free Monster Energy for a year. Well, only about 30 or so people had entered at that point, so I figured why the heck not, and filled them all out right there. Of course, I won, but the catch was we got all the monsters at once. So I was given 365 cans of Monster. Things did not go well from there. I drank myself sick on Monster just because it was free, and the school's tap was horrible. One of my roommates drank so much Monster that he had heart palpitations and had to go to the emergency room. We did make some awesome can pyramids though, which was pretty fun. I won a year's worth of chocolate. I'm not a huge fan of chocolate, I'm more of a savory person myself, so I was expecting my winnings to last well over a year. It ended up lasting less than a month. Everyone kept taking a few bars here and there thinking I wouldn't notice, since there was so much. By the time I actually went to get some for myself, there were 2 bars and a pack of hot chocolate mix left. I didn't win anything, but I am now getting my pension. That, with my savings, gives me a budget of just over $100,000 per year. Just under $2,000 per week. So far, it's great. No more commute and no more bullcrap meetings. I can sleep in as long as I want, get on Reddit as much as I want, and pretty much do whatever I want within reason. Basically, it tastes like freedom. I never thought I'd get to tell the internet this story. I won a lifetime supply of butt lubricant from a local adult shop near my hometown. My girlfriend and I were visiting from our home on the coast of the state in which I live. We drove past the shop and I remarked that I remembered when it was a tiny store only about 800 square feet in size. It's huge now, easily more than 6,000 square feet. She remarked that she'd never been inside and was genuinely curious. We went in and looked around for a while, and a cute girl behind the counter asked if we had entered their yearly prize drawing. Nope, we entered our information. A few months go by and I'd long since forgotten about it. I got an email and a voicemail message one day telling me I won a lifetime supply of CleanStream water-based lubricant. It turns out you get one 8-ounce tube each month. You must pick it up in the store, but if you can't make it to the store that month, you can call or email and request it to be put on hold until you can try to make it by there. Until my girlfriend and I broke up, I was making great use of the stuff since she enjoyed doing the deed that particular way. Now though, we've been broken up about 3 months and I have 7 full bottles of this stuff that need to get used. I'm gonna have to start dating again, I guess. I mean, it's probably gonna be a good line on the first date. So, I want a lifetime supply of this stuff. Not me, but during the time of the Vietnam War, my grandfather was convinced by some shady dude to buy a stake in an apartment building. Fast forward to today, and he gets $350,000 in the mail per year from the building, which is apparently doing very well. My grandfather has to do absolutely nothing in return. Pretty sweet deal. I get free burritos for a year from Moe's and it's still going strong. I know I didn't win it per se, but the way I got it was by waiting in line for 3.5 hours to be one of the first 50 customers. I had to go away to school, so I haven't really been able to use the pass that much, but when I've been home, I've eaten a lot of burritos. I've won free petrol for life and it's been amazing so far. There was a new McDonald's opening up around campus and they offered free Big Macs for a year to the first 100 people there. 1 free Big Mac per week. A bunch of my friends and I got up at 3 a.m. to go wait in line for our Big Mac vouchers. It's currently week 28 and we all want to die, but we have to use them. We're poor college students, damn it. My dad won a year of free Great Harvest bread, which amounted to 1 loaf of bread per week. It was delicious. Well, I brought a $1 scratch ticket and I keep winning my dollar back. Every time I go to the gas station, I use it to buy another $1 ticket and I keep winning it back. So there's that. When I was working at a pizza place, we had a guest who got free pizza for life. But he didn't win it, he earned it. Our store was robbed and as he was just pulling up to pick up his pizza, he noticed what was going on inside and didn't leave his car. So when the robber drove off, he followed him and got his license plate number and then came back to the store so he could give it to the police. The robber was arrested with all the money and even the checks addressed to our pizza shop still in his car. The guest got free pizza for life. He only came once a month or so, though I don't think there was even a limit on it. Did someone you know go out to buy cigarettes and then abandon their family? My daughter's mother unexpectedly fell pregnant. I hate the unexpectedly fell pregnant bit, but it's less complicated to say it that way. We weren't together long before, 8 months or so. We'd talked a lot about going traveling. She had done a little and wanted to take me to see all those cool places she had been, and we'd both go to see some new cool places together. Becoming a mother pretty much seemed like it was the end of the world for her. I tried to be optimistic, tried making up stories of how we'd be cool parents who traveled the world with our kid, and our kid would grow up with massively broad horizons. I don't know if she ever believed that could be a possibility, but eventually our daughter was born. Even now I don't know how to portray my daughter's mother as someone who just abandoned their child, but I'll cut it down a bit. There was no motherly instinct in her. Whether it wasn't there or she just didn't want to be a mother, I don't know. She had her life planned out and a baby messed it all up. After about 4 or 5 months of heartbreakingly never seeing any love for our daughter, I gave her the ouch she wanted. I said, "If you can't or won't be a mother, you know where the fricking door is." Within an hour she had packed, called her sister to pick her up, and she left. At first it was tough to find a rhythm to our lives, but I have some good family who helped me a lot. I grew up the youngest of 4 boys, and I know nothing at all about little girls. At the beginning, every couple of months or so, I sent messages, emails, or Facebook messages. In 3 years, I never received a reply, not a word from her since the week she left. Eventually, I deleted her from my Facebook. After weeks of hurting and hoping she'd reply, her sister showed me a message telling her she wished I'd stop sending the messages. She said she just wants to forget it. It being her daughter. She often referred to her as it when she was pregnant since we avoided knowing the gender and even a few times when she was born until I flipped my crap about it. My daughter is 7 now and is happy and loved. I've kind of always skirted around the subject of mum with her. I went with the story that mummy lives far, far, far away and she wanted you to live here with me where you'd be loved and safe. which appeases her, among a few other fairy tale stories I told her like Mummy is a Fairy. She's pretty happy-go-lucky, which I hope she never grows out of, but there's going to come a time when she's going to want to know more. Incredibly tempting to go down the road of your mum's a selfish C-word, but that won't happen. About a year ago, I came to find out she has a little brother in either America or Canada now with a guy she met in New Zealand. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know whether it's karma or irony. Before I met her mum, I was a bit of a jerk, irresponsible, quick to run if the going got tough. In some respects, I can understand why she left and why others leave their kids. I was there, willing to change my plans for a child that she didn't want in that life. I gave her the option. I don't resent her taking it, but I'll always resent wanting to forget, though. My daughter's mother wanted to spend her life traveling rather than being a mother. Not mad at her, I'm doing as well as I can. Way to step up, my man. It's amazing the ways different parents can respond to the responsibility of parenthood. I've heard that some parents who initially feel nothing eventually grow into it, so maybe the mother should have stuck around, but at least this girl has one loving parent. My grandfather, who I've never met, walked out on my dad. I never really knew anything about him other than that he lived in Florida and chose favorites to the extreme. My dad has 9 brothers and sisters he left behind with my amazing grandmother, Rose. Who I call my grandfather is another amazing person named Jim. Jim worked at a casket company and listened to my grandmother's story one day at the bake shop, I think. After hearing it, he would send check after check to my grandmother offering to help, which my grandmother would never cash and just let build up. When he realized he wasn't losing any money from his bank account, he showed up at my grandmother's doorstep with another check and talked to her. He lived with her after that day until the day she sadly died. Jim is 90 years old and still kicking it. I love that man more than I can express in words. He took in 10 kids? My God, that man is a freaking saint. On my 6th birthday party, my birth mother packed up at the house and took me, my brother and sister a few states away to stay with her brother. When we finally came back, we were living with her family and got to visit my dad in our old house. Seeing the small table and the thrown-in furniture used to resemble a memory of a house is still burnt into my soul, especially the image of my heartbroken dad sitting alone at the table when we left. The more I learn and look back at how my dad handled my birth mother being the worst of people, the more I love and appreciate him. Sucks that I spent so much time fighting with him growing up. I'm just looking around this group of stories to see if my dad's here, because I'd really like to hear his explanation. My real grandfather was a piece of work. I wouldn't say that he was a terrible person, but he was rough. He left my grandmother in the 50s with 5 kids and nothing. I know there are stories about him messing around during World War II with every woman he could find, and that there are probably a lot of half-siblings out there that nobody knows about. Well, I know my mum said they were all so poor growing up because the only income they had was their mum, my grandmother, doing things like secretarial work. The man I call Grandpa found her, loved her, and married her, and ended up with 5 kids because of it. And as a kid, I never even knew until I was older that he wasn't my real grandpa. He was the one who read stories with me. He actually read Harry Potter as an old man because he knew I'd read it and wanted to be able to talk to me about it. And he's the one who always had the Werther's candy for me. I loved that man. I miss him a lot now that he's gone. He's my reminder that anything can make a family as long as everyone cares about each other. No blood relations need be involved. Meanwhile, the only thing my real grandfather ever gave me was a washer and a dryer that are from the 90s that I brought after he died from his tiny little dirty trailer. I needed a washer and dryer, and my mum desperately needed to sell the stuff to have money to pay for his funeral. There's a lesson in this somewhere for people. My real grandpa married and divorced and remarried again and again. In the end, he died sad and lonely and angry with the world all by himself in a dirty little trailer. The man we call my grandpa died surrounded by his adopted family and his wife and even grandkids, who all loved him and mourned his loss something fierce. Whilst my parents divorced when I was 4, and possibly one of my earliest memories was my dad and his guitar case walking out of the first home I knew, this story is someone else's. I did a 6-month stint as a credit and debit card call center goon leading up to the end of last year. I enjoyed it, and as much of a cynical jerk as I may be, I love helping people. This particular one will stay with me forever. A woman called up asking me to update her title. It was listed as Mrs., and she informed me that she had been divorced some time ago. I offered my condolences and she stuttered somewhat, but thanked me, saying it was for the best. After a little bit of conversing, she ended up spilling her guts to me and explained that her husband had just up and ditched her and their son on fricking Christmas Eve. Just up and left without a word after 20-ish years of marriage. She had done some digging and he was in Southeast Asia doing a bunch of working girls and a whole load of substances at the same time. After revealing this to her son, the son started acting out, and I related to this. It kind of hit home, and I said that from my experience, he was 20 and I was the result of my dad walking, that the rebellion is anger and to not hate him for it. Just support and love him and give him the option of contact with his father. And so on and so forth. She was in tears by the end, apologizing profusely for going on a tangent and that it probably wasn't my job to deal with her crap. To which I replied, "You're a person before you're a customer, and sometimes we all just need someone to listen." She felt a lot better and went on her way, but ended the conversation saying she wished she'd never searched for her ex, as the truth hurt more than not knowing. People leave because of many reasons. Let them, lest you end up hurting yourself more. My mother went on a trip when I was 7. I remember asking my dad when she was coming back. She got in touch a few years after that, but it still hurt having to learn that she lied to me. I still don't have many good feelings about her. It's probably because I never really knew how to trust her after that. She still believes that she can have a big say in my life even after she left, even though she never helps my father with any bills. She acts like nothing ever happened, like she didn't betray my father and abandon me, and my brother, who was 4 at the time. She still tries to act like the doting mother by promising to help my father, but conveniently forgets to send money. And when she does send some cash, she never lets us forget it. I didn't just take off and leave. We both knew I was heading to another state to live for the remainder of our son's life. I set up child support before I left and have had my son every summer since I left. I decided to leave because I was too immature to raise him to be a functioning member of society. I messed up my life before he was even born and I didn't want him to follow me down that path. 16 years later, he now has a stable life with a brother and sister that he cares about. I'm very proud of everything they've accomplished. I took the easy way out and just ran away. Someday I'll sit him down and explain everything, but it might be too late. Admitting that you were in the wrong doesn't make this okay, but at least you owned it. It doesn't look like you had another family afterwards, so maybe you learned from your mistakes. I was the one who left. My mother wasn't the world's worst, but the substances were starting to become a major issue. My father had already left, and we saw him about once every couple of months. My mum always had a new boyfriend, and it was never a good one. I was growing very sick of the situation, and I knew that I had to get out of it. The only problem was that my little sister was stuck in the same boat. I was 11, and she was 3. In the middle of the night, I grabbed my little sister, a backpack of clothes for both of us, and my bicycle. I rode until I reached my grandma's house. It wasn't too far, about 25 miles. It felt like it took forever. My grandma took us in, and that's where we stayed. It's not that we didn't have a grandma before, but my mum had always refused to get treatment and accept help. My grandma would offer, my mum would get angry, and we'd be back out the door. This time was different. My grandma changed the locks in the morning. Mum was too hopped up on the substances and didn't wake up until around noon. Plenty of time to get things done. My grandma set up a bedroom for both of us, and when my mum finally woke that morning, she broke down. It was like she finally realized that something had to change. She finally entered treatment. Fast forward 18 years, my wonderful grandparents have passed away, but I have a respectable relationship with my mum. She's clean and runs her own cleaning business that makes ends meet. She just received her GED. My little sister is a semester away from graduating college, and she was the second person in my family to ever graduate high school. I was the first. I got an athletic scholarship and went to college. 2 master's degrees and a job, brand new house, and 2 awesome dogs later, and I'm the happiest guy in the world. I'm a teacher, and my experience has been what led to my success. I share pieces of it with my students, behavioral disorders, to let them know that everyone has a chance. Sometimes you just have to take it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My dad walked out on my family when I was about 4 years old. He left us for a woman who he'd been sleeping with to get crystal. I grew up hearing constant fighting in my house, but I remember that day. My mother sounded more terrified and desperate than I'd ever heard her before. I was sitting behind a chair in the living room, and I remember not liking how cold it was. Slamming doors, screaming. They came out and my dad just said he was leaving. I ran to him because I wanted to go too. He literally shut the door in my face and left. I remember the worst part about it was my mum sitting on the floor, sobbing. I sat on her lap and told her, "It'll be okay, Mummy. I love you." Seriously, I've always wanted to just shut that memory out. Blech. My grandfather left my dad and his family on my dad's first birthday. So now my dad hates his birthday and his family kinda hates him because they feel like it was his fault or something. My dad ended up getting an awesome stepdad and kept some contact with his biological dad. Both of them died within a few months of each other a few years ago. There was no funeral for my biological grandfather. My dad wasn't sad at all. When his stepdad died, though, he gave the eulogy, and it's the only time I've ever seen my dad cry. My grandfather went out while my grandmother was in labor, and he never came back. She sent the cops looking for him and everything, and when they went to her house, he had left a note saying he got his secretary pregnant and he was leaving. He left her with no money, 4 kids, and having never worked in her life. My dad was the one she was giving birth to. He never met his father until he was called to my grandfather's deathbed a few years ago. When my dad walked into that hospital to see him, the witch who he had cheated with stepped in front of my dad before he went into the room, saying, "You aren't getting any money." My dad said, "Shut up, I just want to meet my father." She stepped aside. We walked in, and the old man saw us. His face changed expressions from plain to absolute terror. He began sobbing. Sobbing. How could he know it was his son, you ask? Because they looked like fricking identical twins. He barely sobbed out the words, "You look just like me." He tried to say, "I'm sorry," but my dad interrupted, saying, "I forgive you." This sounds like a scene from a movie, but it is the most precious memory I have of my dad. I've never seen my dad the same way again. He's my personal hero. How could he just forgive him? My dad never had a Christmas because of how poor they were. He did Boy Scouts alone. I just don't know how he forgave him. I don't get it. I can tell you how, because it's something I figured out maybe 5 years ago after dealing with an unresolved anger over my wife leaving me for one of my supposed best friends. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not the person you're forgiving. Holding on to all that anger and pain just eats you up and rips your soul apart. Once you forgive the person, you start to heal the damage. Until then, it's just a scab over a festering wound. My father moved out when I was 7. He was going to visit his sick father, which might have been partially true as my grandfather on his side was sick and ended up passing away around that time. I was just really confused why my mother was crying when he said he was going to visit my grandpa. I found out why when he didn't come back. Last time I heard from him, he called me on my 9th birthday to tell me he wasn't going to pick me up that Friday, for the weekends at his place that we usually have, because he was going to find a new house to live in and didn't want to bore me with paperwork. Anyway, I've never heard from him again. I wanted to comment because something actually happened regarding my father around 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, a co-worker at my restaurant pulled me aside and told me she saw a guy with my last name who looked like me. My co-worker said he had asked the guy if he had a son named my name, and the man said he did, but he hadn't seen him in a long time. I kinda blew it off as a coincidence, but 2 weeks ago, the co-worker pulled me aside again and said the guy came back with a business card asking to give the card to me, since he knew my co-worker worked with me. It was him. So now I have my father's cell number, work address, work numbers, and email. I'm not really sure if I'm going to call or email or not. He has the same handwriting as me. My mother was a working girl, alcoholic, and addicted to substances. She left when I was 3 and never came back. My father would tell me that she loved me very much but just wasn't ready or mature enough to have a child. He passed away when I was 16. When that happened, I was able to get in contact with my mother's sister, an aunt to me. She would hang out with me, but when I asked around my mother, she would beat around the bush and say that my mum didn't want me to see her the way she was. I hoped to graduate college and then see my mother to show her that I did good and be able to talk to her as an adult, but she died right before I turned 22. So I never got to ask her why, but it's easy enough to assume that when the party lifestyle has its hooks in you, those hooks are deep indeed and never really let go. This is a really sad story. I guess the best thing a person can do in this kind of situation is live long, live well, and use their experiences to make sure that their future loved ones never have any of the same questions growing up. My mum didn't really follow the "gonna get cigs, be right back" route. It was made very clear she was leaving because she was a mum and felt like my siblings and I robbed her of her youth. With that being said, I was 8 years old when it happened. There were warning signs that she was going down that path. She stopped taking care of her kids. We stopped going to school. For me, I was being bullied and it was better to not go than to go and be made a laughingstock. She stopped making food. She'd give us money to go to the convenience store or pork out on Twinkies or something junk food related. My dad was never home because he was working at a prison and often would pull long shifts, which actually gave my mum time to plan her escape. The internet was starting to become a big thing, so my mum was using it as a tool to find single, younger men and to get them to bring her youth back. She was in her early 30s. Anyway, eventually my dad got wind of something going on. It was actually the school that made him realize something was amiss. My mum didn't care about us not going to school, but made clear that should we leave and wander the neighborhood, we should run from people who would recognize us. Well, the principal went to see why we weren't in school. My mum apparently said we were at the park, and the principal, a really sweet lady, went looking. Sure enough, we were playing on the jungle gym, and my dad was called. Once that happened, the next thing I know, my mum was leaving. I remember I was in tears and I just knew that I wasn't going to see her again. And I was right. 12 years went by. I went from depressed to resentful to accepting what had happened. I talked to her on Skype once, but that was really it. My grandmother had raised me, and when I turned 14, I immigrated to Canada, where I now reside. November of the 12th year she abandoned me, I found out she was dying of cancer and it was only a matter of weeks before she would die. I hopped on a plane with my ex's mum and I saw her. She was 42 when I saw her, and she looked like she was 70. Anyway, I spent a good 5 days with her. We didn't talk much. I was comforted by her presence and she was comforted by mine. It broke my heart to leave her, but I had to go back to work. I'll never forget 3 things though. 1, she said I love you for the very first time. 2, she endured great physical pain to get downstairs to say goodbye to me. And finally, how she begged me not to leave her. She died not even a week after I got back. I'll always remember the time I spent with her as an adult and cherish that. I didn't go to see her to make things right or whatever. I'd learned by that point she had made mistakes and dwelling on the why of it all was getting me nowhere. She left me as a sickly, soft-spoken, crying little girl and saw me for the first time before she died as a healthy, strong-willed adult. I got a package from my stepdad about a month later. Inside was a pearl necklace that I wear every day, and a picture of me from when I was 8 years old. With it, there was a small note about how she kept that picture with her all the time and would often wonder about me. My siblings had reached out to her, but I never did. She had recent pictures of them, but just this one tattered old photograph of me. It made me cry. I know that this was a long story, so I'll end it and say that in her case, she may have made some horrific mistakes, but in the end, she would have done anything to change what she did. But I also know that she needed to leave because she was ruining the lives of my siblings and I. I love my mum, and I always will. My cousin from an extended part of my family decided to disappear. At least, that's what my family tells me. In the late 90s and noughties, I spent a lot of time with him and his family in Greenville, South Carolina. They would also come up to North Carolina to visit us. I would like to think I was the closest person to him from the North Carolina side of the family. He's 1 year older than me and should be turning 25 or so soon. All was fine until his mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness. She fought for years and was as hard-nosed a fighter as I've ever seen. During this fight, his dad was diagnosed with lung cancer and died relatively soon afterwards. Eventually, his mother passed away as well, and my cousin was essentially on his own. My side of the family tried to keep in touch, and they thought of all people, I'd be the one he'd reach out to. I haven't heard from him since 2009, when I believe he was selling real estate in South Carolina. I've tried all social media to find him. I'm fairly certain he just wants to disappear. It worries me though, because what if that wasn't the case? I mean, I can definitely see that being his personality, but you never know. I know I've gone on a little rant here, but I knew him and his friends pretty well. I know they're the kind of people who are on Reddit. Surely one of them, and maybe even my cousin, will see this and know with certainty who I'm talking about. Chris, you don't have to get in touch or even have a friend let me know you're alright. I just wanted to let you know I've not forgotten about you and I miss you. Emergency service workers. When have you laughed when you really shouldn't have? I used to work in an adult and pediatric emergency department as a scribe. I followed a doctor, NP, or a PA and wrote their charts. One time a patient came in for downstairs injury to her girl bits. So the PA I was assigned to, who's my father's age, says, that'll be interesting, and we go in. The lady is very friendly, bubbly, overweight, with long, fake nails. He asks her what brings her to the ED, and she says, well, you see, I just got my nails done, and I was having fun and really going to town down there, and it felt really good, and I scratched my hoo-ha. She laughed awkwardly, and I couldn't handle myself and had to leave. The PA kept himself together and told the patient I left because my job was over, as I wrote down her complaint. But honestly, I was crying in the hallway with another tech who overheard. The door was shut, but she was loud and proud and the unit was quiet. I scratched my hoo-ha became a response to "What's up?" at my hospital for a bit. During my EMT basic clinical rotations, my buddy Greg and I are working in an emergency room trying to do as many ECGs as possible, so that we could check that off our list of clinical skills that we needed to do. Greg is hooking up an absolutely enormous woman to ECG leads. To accomplish this, he indicates to her that he'll have to move her left melon to gain access to her chest wall. I'm not exaggerating when I say that she weighed 400 pounds. One of her heaping bosoms probably weighed a solid 40 pounds by itself. So Greg, using the back of his forearm, is pushing aside her left chest. Or trying to, and failing. So he's basically rubbing her left chesticle with his forearm, trying to get it out of the way. His face, meanwhile, is about 12 inches from her face. She leans closer to Greg, moans, and says, "Oh, you like that, don't you?" And I have to leave. I admitted a patient to a surgical floor who had a baton stuck up his butt. When getting to the report, I couldn't help but chuckle. It was the first time I'd dealt with someone who had a foreign object where it shouldn't have been. The worst part was when I showed him the intraoperative pictures of them removing it, he asked the surgeon where the glitter went. "Oh, don't worry. He'll keep finding glitter for years. It never goes away." Once again, doing videos on medical cases, the narrator prepares for the deluge of completely innocent men who seem to fall exactly onto cylindrical objects butt first after their pants fell off. The only thing different about this story is the absence of the words, "I tripped and fell." In fact, this gentleman seems to own it. I work as an X-ray tech in a heavily Hispanic area in the US. I don't know a lot of Spanish, but I know just enough to get by. We get this patient in the ER, and there are 3 of us trying to fumble our way through this exam in our broken Spanish. We eventually get through the exam, and we're all kind of congratulating each other on knowing just enough Spanish. Then, out of the middle of nowhere, this guy says, "You know, you guys speak pretty good Spanish." In perfect English. I guess none of us decided to ask if he spoke English. Similar story, I walked in to perform an exam and the patient is just observing me. I said, "Hi sir, I'm blah blah blah, I'm here to do blah blah blah. How's your day going?" No response. "Can you hear me?" Now I'm thinking that he's not a native or a psych patient. Habla inglés? The patient says, "Do I look like a freaking wetback?" I was holding inside my laughter as I said, no? He was a regular, no tattoos Hispanic male with a mustache with a tanned complexion. He looked like Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah, he did look like an immigrant that crossed a river. Was an EMT. My partner was doing a head-to-toe on a little old lady that fell at a nursing home. She gets to the patient's left hip, squeezes it and says, "Ma'am, do you know how long you've had this growth on your hip?" Little old lady replies in a TV-worthy Boston Brahmin accent, "That's my chest, dear." Gave myself a bloody nose when I tried to hide my laughter by shoving my face into the oxygen bag and smacking it on the tank. Super busy day on the oncology floor, short-staffed, and I had 6 patients and was in charge. Literally running up and down the halls, no lunch. A patient passed away peacefully. I call next of kin to notify. I stay on the phone to offer condolences and they were speechless. The conversation is weird, so I call the next number on the list, and that call was okay. Turns out I dialed a wrong number, but the wrong number also had a family member in the same hospital. 30 minutes later, the wrong number lady rushes into the unit and asks about the death in room 417. Wasn't a dead patient, by the way. I immediately get drenched in sweat and tell her my error. I got woozy and dizzy. She props me up and started making jokes. We ended up hugging and laughing. She brought me lunch and a card the next week, and I smile every time I think of her. She made my screw-up livable. I had a patient who was high on some intense cocktail of substances. We found him jumping from couch to couch in a lobby covered in freshly cut hair that wasn't his. We finally get him to the ambulance, but he proceeded to scream at my partner, "You have beautiful eyes. I'm gonna F you in the butt." And then he begins to cry for his mother. We make it to the hospital and the patient's vocabulary decreases to only meatballs. Every question the nurse asks, that was his response. We try to remain professional as possible, but sometimes you can't help but laugh. Damn it, he stole my pickup line. Responded to a fatal fire. When I arrived on scene and went to where the body was located, the trooper introduced me to the deceased. The trooper said, where are my manners? Meet Frank, deceased. Say hello, Frank. As you can see, he had a late night of drinking and a bad case of setting himself on fire. Laughing in front of a dead guy who set himself on fire is not one of my strong moments. Ex-firefighter here responded to a rollover with persons trapped inside. It turned out to be a car versus train. Got the front wheels stuck on the tracks. I have no clue how. It was a regular road crossing, so the train is barreling down, blaring horn clips, and flips the car into the ditch. The driver was trapped. My partner, instead of the usual, "Hi ma'am, where are you hurt?" etc., said to the driver, "Did you crap your pants?" One of my friends was an EMT, and he responded to a call from a guy who got attacked by his cat. Turns out the guy tried to do the deed with his cat, and the cat wasn't having any of it. My friend said that was the only time he and his partner laughed in a client's face. So I was riding along with my dad, who was a firefighter and paramedic, and we went to the house for a mentally handicapped female who had fallen and couldn't get up. I should mention that this female lives with her husband, who is also mentally handicapped, and they have a caretaker who checks in on them daily but doesn't hang around 24/7. Anyway, so he sat her up and my dad asks his other medic to run out to the ambulance to grab an extra cold compress to put on her head, where she fell, but she says there's an ice pack in her freezer that will work just fine in the next room. Well, the other medic goes into the other room and looks for about 2 minutes before coming back with a bag of frozen vegetables that would work as well. The mentally handicapped lady looks him straight in the face and says, "That's not a cold pack, those are vegetables. Are you retarded?" In short, paramedic got called retarded by a mentally handicapped woman. I feel like that's one of the few people who could get away with using that insult. Also, how do you respond when she calls you that? Pretty damn funny. This happened to me once, at a grocery store when the new tap-to-pay cards came out. I'd never used it, so I quickly tapped it, and it didn't register as you had to hold it there for a few seconds. The mentally challenged bag boy said, "Is this guy retarded?" to the cashier. I wasn't sure if I should laugh or cry. I was administering IV push meds to a patient. Their guest was German and asks me with a giant smile, "Are those the Woodstock substances that make him super happy hippo, yeah?" I fricking lost it. Patient who was in police custody and out of his mind on some substance or other. A nurse entered to use a catheter to get a urine sample for the analysis, and in the process of doing that, the patient screams, "It feels like a fly is doing the deed with my wang." Also, an older guy who may or may not have been there mentally gave me a lecture on how he knew I was a liar because my lips were moving. I had to step out of the room to laugh. Sort of reverse here. During my rotations at a university medical center, I was shadowing an RN when we went to help a patient who was paralyzed from the waist down from a motorcycle accident. Keep in mind, this patient was big, probably 300 pounds, and he couldn't go number 2 by himself anymore. Therefore, the RN put on rock music, snapped on some gloves, and proceeded to joke with the patient. We had to push down on his stomach while digitally activating his butt to make the brown stuff come out. I swear about a gallon of it burst forth, and the nurse told me it was the biggest code brown he had ever seen. Making jokes and laughing with the patient made it extremely comfortable and a fun experience. 10 out of 10 would stick my finger up a butt again. I had a 95-year-old nurse crap on my hand once. We both laughed. I answered a fire alarm at a hotel room once. I knocked on the door and a rail-thin, 90-pound-ish woman answered the door in nothing but a t-shirt. I told her that we need to have access to the hotel room just to verify that there wasn't an issue. I walk in and immediately see a 300-pound, mid-50s guy, the woman was in her 30s, totally undressed and handcuffed to the bed. Alright, whatever. Standard question, do you know how the alarm was set off? Oh, yeah, I accidentally hit it when I threw his boxer shorts. Alright, ma'am, have a nice night. Cue hilarious laughter from the stairwell back to the firehouse. How do boxers set off a fire alarm? If you throw something at an electric firearm, like a smokehead or something, it can set it off. Same thing happens with CO alarms. If you dropped it or knocked into it, or apparently throw boxes at it, it can set it off. This wasn't a sprinkler head, or I'd have felt far worse for the guy handcuffed to the bed because he would have taken it all. I was an intern firefighter back when I was in college, and we received this distress call from a senior home one day. Apparently there was an old lady about 70 to 75 years old who was really drunk and she broke her hip walking through the hallway. When we got there, she was on the ground covered in her own number 2. The thing I laughed at was what she was saying while she was on the ground. The old lady said, "Get the frick off me!" The captain said, "Ma'am, you need to hold still while the ambulance comes." Hey, Oscar," referring to her housekeeper. "Is that you?" "Yes, ma'am, Oscar is right here." "Well, F you, Oscar." Advanced emergency medical technician working a standby at one of our many nightclubs a couple of summers ago. I came back from handing over a transport to find a man with a hole in the front of his jeans all covered in blood. He was sitting calmly next to his friend, joking and having a good time. I ask him what's going on and he admits to drinking and taking quite a bit of white snow. He states that he's not in any pain but worried about all the blood. We expose his nether regions to find out that he had apparently impaled his ball bag on the cleat of a pool umbrella and now had one of his family jewels protruding from said hole. His very British friend saw what happened and yelled, "Bollocks, me mate, your bean is out the bag." I had to excuse myself for a minute. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I had a gentleman unalive himself by placing a clear plastic bag over his head and running a line from a helium tank. Apparently, it's one of the least painful ways to go. You just get sleepy and pass out. No oxygen starvation. Anyways, me and my partner are waiting for the deputy since it's clear he's been dead a while. We start talking in the bathroom with the body. So, what do you think his last words were? "Ahoy! Goodbye, world!" Said in a Mickey Mouse voice, of course. I'll never forget that I had hiccups for 2 hours after we got done laughing our butts off. The report and dealing with the family was super awkward. Had a pregnant lady about to pop and brought her upstairs. The L&D nurses at this facility were pretty snobby and always seemed to have an attitude problem. I gave them my report and told them that according to my assessment, they needed to prep for delivery ASAP. The charge nurse rolled her eyes at me and began condescendingly interviewing the patient, telling her she's sure that the patient will be able to go home tonight. About 5 minutes go by and they finally get her over to the bed from my stretcher. I get my paperwork signed. The nurse goes to check for dilation and lifts up the sheet only to find that the patient is crowning. She immediately starts yelling for help and gives me a dirty look. I whispered, "Told you so," winked and walked out as the rest of the nurses walked in to help. Not my most professional moment, but I had a good chuckle. "She gave you a dirty look for doing your job properly? Jeez." Some people would rather be right than do the right thing, and this lady clearly took someone else's correct opinion personally. Very satisfying to be in the position of the correct individual. My dad's a police officer and has always been known for his dark dad humor. One unfortunate day, a motorcyclist ran a red light at an intersection just before a truck stop and was run over. The rider's head and helmet were caught under the wheels of the truck and popped. As he tells the story, a lieutenant shows up and asks, "What happened here, and what are we stepping in that's so sticky?" My dad said, "Well, the rider lost his mind." I thought it was funny, as did my dad. Apparently, the lieutenant did not. When I was an EMT and I had a psych patient that had been picked up at the airport by the cops after he was found wandering around barefoot, my report from them was quite vague, so I didn't really know what to expect when I was asking him questions. He didn't seem very oriented and kept drifting off to sleep. I asked him if he knew what year it was, and he said 1985, and he suddenly yelled, 1.21 gigawatts! I was so startled I couldn't help but laugh. I still don't know whether he was messing with me or not, but either way, he must really like Back to the Future. I was an EMT. We responded to a call at a nursing home for a psychological. Got the info from the nurse that the dear little old lady is apparently hallucinating cats. I walked into the patient's room and asked, "Meow, what seems to be the problem here?" My partner and the nurse ran from the room. I found them literally on the floor laughing in the hallway. So I don't know if I fit the category, but this story made me lose all professionalism in a heartbeat. I'm a social worker, so I interview a lot of children. One of the standard questions is asking if children know where their private parts are and asking if anyone has ever touched them there. So I ask this 11-year-old if anyone has tried to touch her, and she says no. I ask if she knows what to do if someone tries to do that. She tells me that whenever she goes to a friend's house, she has a pair of scissors under her pillow for protection. I chuckled a bit, but maintained my composure. I asked the girl if she would tell anyone. She says she'd tell her mum and tell that she didn't kill them on purpose. I lost it. I couldn't continue the interview after that. I told my supervisor about it and she just laughed. A young lady admitted into the ER, embarrassed to death with a small piece of plastic from a toy stuck in her lady parts. While getting an IV from the nurse, she complained about getting jabbed with a metal needle. The nurse started to explain how the IV catheter is actually plastic, to which she responded, "I've got enough plastic stuck in me right now, thank you very much." Back in my army days, we were in the process of doing an 18-mile ruck march. It's pretty hot out. All of a sudden, one of my squad members collapses to the ground. The medics rush to him and start sticking an IV in his arm while asking him questions. "Do you know where you are? Do you know what month it is? Do you know what day of the week it is?" He looks up, confused. Waffles. "No, you fricking moron. Let's get him out of here." It's been brought to my attention that something similar has happened in a documentary where the guy mentioned hash browns. Heat exhaustion is some pretty crazy stuff. It happened to me once. I was very confused and all I could think about were mashed potatoes. I followed everyone, not quite knowing what was going on, and ended up in the chow hall. Standing in the line, someone must have noticed something was wrong. He asked if I was okay, and I responded, "I don't know, I just need mashed potatoes." They were talking to me some more. I don't know what they were asking, and all I could do was answer, "Yes." They led me to the front of the line, Turns out they were serving mashed potatoes. Best damn potatoes I've ever had. After resting, eating, and drinking, I was fine though. I was a newish certified nursing assistant, and a patient caught the bus, self-deleted, during my shift. The aide who had the woman on her assignment grabbed me and another newbie to show us how to do post-mortem care. We undress the body and begin to wash it. I'm standing on one side, other newbie on the other, experienced aide at the foot of the bed. We roll the body onto its side towards me and it moans. The newbie got bug-eyed and started to freak out. The experienced aide explains that it's just air leaving the lungs and passing through the vocal cords. The newbie accepts this but is clearly freaked out. It's her first dead person. We roll the body the other way and it moans again. Newbie begins to freak out again. By now I'm no longer on task and just amused as heck by the newbie. Then the newbie glances at our deceased friend's face. In the course of rolling the body back and forth, her eyelids had been pushed open. Newbie starts to panic. She's looking at me. Oh God, she's looking at me. Why is she looking at me? Newbie then runs out of the room and I just lose it. Can't hold it together anymore and I start to laugh. After the moment passed, I felt a little bad laughing while preparing a body for the funeral home, but I know that our patient would have found the situation hysterical too. Ex-corrections officer. I was caught on camera laughing wildly while having to subdue an undressed man covered in number 2 wielding a butt shank. He'd used the brown stuff to paint on Peter Criss makeup. That stuff cracked me up. Well, I'm guessing that particular Kiss tribute band didn't take off then. Sad. I feel it would have been novel, if not good. Firefighter here. I was doing a primary search on the first floor when my captain and I crawled straight into a special dungeon. The call started out pretty normal as far as emergency dispatches are concerned. A neighbor sees smoke coming out from a house nearby, the proper address is given, and we roll out. On scene now, and the neighbors have gathered and informed us that the homeowner is usually gone this time of day. But usually doesn't cut it in the fire service, so we're going in. So my captain and I grab a handline and went to complete a primary search of the first floor as the rest of the arriving responders set up a second floor egress route and pull more handlines. So as soon as we get in the front door, amen Halligan, we stick along the right side wall and move further into the house. Thermal imaging shows no heat, but there was a ton of smoke coming from the door that leads to the basement. We head down the stairs after a careful sounding, and this is when stuff got weird. Imagine a room full of hot smoke. That smoke will rise, and since this smoke was coming from the basement, the lower we got into the basement, the more smoke cleared. Walls, ceiling, floor all lined with rubber, and a close rack full of rubber suits. A table with straps, all also covered in rubber. Whips, cuffs, some special toys, and things that shouldn't belong in any chamber related to doing the deed. And the most effed up part we found down there was the homeowner, in a full dungeon uniform, trying to put out a fire that was running from the top of the light stand he had set up to the ceiling. It wasn't too big to be honest, but way too big to be fanning with a folded rubber suit while wearing another rubber suit in a room covered in rubber. This guy must not have realized all the gross, toxic, thick smoke heading up the stairs and out of the house. Honestly, I don't know how long he was down there, but without my SCBA on, it felt like I was snorting Rubbermaid. We grabbed the homeowner, who was now suffering from severe overheating and exhaustion because he was in a full-body rubber suit panicking, and then we got the fire out. So when did I laugh when I shouldn't have? Well, right as we came into full view of this chamber, I looked back at my God-loving Christian captain who was just in shock as his worldview was altered. So I started cracking up there, and once you start laughing when you're not supposed to, it's impossible to stop. So I'm losing it as well as my oxygen supply. I've seriously never gone through a tank that quick in my career. So the fire was out and people were gathered, as at any fire, barn or house, and were watching two firefighters, one of whom was laughing his butt off, carry this black, steamy, rubber-covered creature out of his house. Then we have to start getting this guy's outfit off because he's showing signs of extreme exhaustion. I calmed down enough to cut this guy out of his suit in front of all his neighbors, who are now realizing this steamy black creature is their neighbor. That's when we figured we should disperse everyone to give the guy a little privacy. We even pulled the trucks up to block most of the scene. All in all, the guy thanked us but said he was quite embarrassed about the whole thing, which was quite obvious. He was a pretty normal guy as far as I'm concerned. He explained a little about how he likes the feeling of rubber, completely airtight around his skin, which was unneeded information, but I'm not the one to tell anyone how to live their life. You do you, rubber suit man. We had an OD we responded to that turned into a running joke at the station. Some girl tried to self-delete and took like 2 milligrams of fentanyl. Normal doses are in micrograms, not milligrams. Anyway, got her close enough to the ER and pumped her full of Narcan and she woke up. Partner opened the back doors and said, "All better, huh?" And she was angry about it and whined about how we didn't know what we were doing. I was being a bit of a jerk and said, "Well, the Narcan was a great guess then." To which she screamed, "Narcan don't do crap." And now whenever we use Narcan, it's good form to shout, "Narcan don't do crap," while pushing it. Little old racist white ladies are always good for a giggle as well. When did sheer luck save you from catastrophe? So I would say I was around 10 years old and my family decides to take the dog for a walk. I decide I want to rollerblade and make big circles around my family as they walk. At one point, I end up a block ahead of my family and a rusty, beat-up truck pulls up and stops, and a guy jumps out. I remember him having a super short beard. He says, "Hey kid, check this out." And he pulls out a skateboard and rides it on the street and says, "Pretty cool skateboard, huh kid? You want it?" I, being completely happy with my rollerblades, say, "No thank you." He says, "Come on, it's free, just come over here and take it." I said, "No, I like my rollerblades." At this point, he looks down the street and sees my family walking up it. Without saying anything to me, he throws his skateboard in the back, jumps in his truck and drives away. I never thought it was weird, didn't tell my parents, and in my head it was like, some dude just tried to give me a skateboard I didn't want. 10 years later, I'm like, holy frick, thank God I didn't fricking like skateboards. In short, didn't get kidnapped because I thought skateboards suck. Finding out from an auntie from my dad's side that my parents were going to let my mum's sister and husband adopt me as a baby because they were childless for a long time. If the transaction happened, it would have been kept a secret. Thank goodness it never happened. The woman is a nutcase and the husband ended up divorcing her after they had a son. Their kid grew up whacked and feral and my parents became his guardian. The poor kid didn't even know how to wipe his butt and had to be spoon-fed at age 10. This one happened to someone else, but it's still interesting. I'm 16 years old and last year when I was walking home from school, I saw two little kids that couldn't be older than 9 who were walking home a little bit in front of me. I assumed they were brother and sister. Anyway, me being so much bigger with longer legs, I eventually started to catch up to them. And right when I was about to turn off into my street, I noticed a car pull up next to them and asked them to get in. My heart stopped when I heard the older one say, "But mister, we don't know you." After that, I kept walking towards them and screamed out, "Lucy, Mark," because I didn't know their actual names. And they both looked at me. I ran up and said, "Guys, don't run off on me like that. Stay close." I pretended like I didn't see the car pulled up next to them and walked with them until the car drove off. They asked me who I was, but I just kept telling them to be quiet until the man goes away. When the guy left, I told them not to talk to strangers and walked them home. I explained to their parents what happened, and I don't think I've ever seen more grateful parents. Don't talk to strangers, kids. So wait, who are you now? Shut up and do what I tell you to do. Which stranger to trust, the calm ones who park next to you in their car, or the one who runs up screaming and pretending to be your sibling? I'm going to say that the assertiveness of this author probably saved those kids. First, let it be known that I have a gift/curse where people feel like they can tell me their life story. Strangers especially. I rode the city bus from a ghetto part of town to Homelessville, where I had to transfer to home. There were a few regulars, but every now and again there'd be someone new and inevitably they'd sit next to me. I was at the transfer bus stop with 3 other people. An old man who spoke no English, so I'd never spoken to. This twitchy gang dude who had gotten on the first bus a few stops after I did. Then there was a man in a suit. He looked like the love child of a successful black guy and The Rock. He sat next to me and started a conversation. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something about his line of questioning creeped me out. On the surface, it wasn't anything like, "What undies are you wearing, little girl?" And aside from sitting way too close, he didn't try to touch me. Maybe I was just too wary of strangers, but I just didn't want to talk to him, and I hoped he got onto another bus. However, I was raised to be polite and couldn't think of a way to tell this guy to please stop talking to me. Then twitchy gangbanger plops down next to me on my other side, also too close. Now I'm sandwiched between 2 guys, and Twitch was almost leaning over me. He starts talking loud and fast, rambling and mumbling to where I can't understand a word. Creepy guy eventually gets up to go stand next to no English, but I still have Mr. Twitchy. Twitchy then proceeds to tell me his life story. He claimed to be in a well-known gang, and I thought he was saying this to appear tough, though he was flying the right colors. He then talked about his role in the gang and how his dealer ripped him off earlier that day. He was pointing to scars on his arms and face and explaining to me how he got them. My bus came and we all climbed into it. Creeper had basically given up talking to me and sat somewhere near the front of the bus, while Twitch followed me to the back. He wasn't as close as he'd been before, so I calmed down ever so slightly. It also helped that I was sitting next to a regular who was blind, so if push came to shove, I could whip Twitch with the cane. He kept up with the constant monologue and didn't stop until Creeper got off the bus. Twitch then says, "Oh, I thought that weirdo was never gonna leave," and runs off. Before he does, I hear him asking the driver the quickest route to get back to where we'd been picked up. I went home and using the location and many hours, I found out that Creeper was a convicted, unspeakable act offender. A month later, I also saw a very familiar mugshot in the paper. Twitch was arrested for murder. In short, had a nice talk with a gang member who, it turned out, killed a lot of people. Also, he got on the wrong bus to protect a 16-year-old girl from an unspeakable act offender. Mine was a few months after I'd turned 21. I'm from India and frequently make trips from my house to Bombay, to one in another state around 1,000 kilometers away. It's a 20-hour journey because I prefer buses over trains. I've been doing it for over 15 years and always booked the exact same seat, 4 seats down from the driver on his side. This particular time, though, I booked my ticket late and instead got a seat on the opposite side of the bus. We'd just stopped for dinner, and once done, I got back to my seat and settled down with a book. As soon as we turned back into the highway, there was a thud and a lot of dust and glass flying around. Turns out a truck rammed into the side of the bus. No one was hurt more than a few scratches. However, in my usual seat, there was a lady about 5 feet tall, and there was a huge block of wood that was stuck over her head. If I'd gotten in that seat, I'd have been decapitated. Was quite a what the frick moment and gave me some perspective on life. In short, didn't get my usual seat on the bus, was spared a decapitation. When I was about 7 years old, my twin, an older brother, and I had gone with a family friend to go to his mother's house. This was nothing out of the ordinary, as we'd gone with this man on several such occasions prior. We were living somewhere in Nevada at the time, nearish the California border. He'd asked my parents if it was okay for him to take the 3 of us for a visit, and my parents said yes. I'm not really sure at what time we left, but we never made it to his mother's house. I was looking forward to seeing her cat again. We drove for hours, my brother, sister, and I in the back seat. This man didn't stop to let us out for a bathroom break, and he didn't have anything other than beer for us to drink, and he was drinking as well. After another hour or so of driving, he got pulled over. He told us not to say anything to the officers. They approached his vehicle and could smell the beer coming off him in waves. They noticed us in the back seat and asked if we were his. He, of course, said yes. The officers didn't believe him. Thank God. They asked him to step out of the car and placed him under arrest. He fought them the entire time until they clubbed him into submission just to get him in the back of the cruiser. Another CHP showed up and took us with him to a foster home where we stayed until our parents could come to pick us up. It wasn't until 15 years later that I'd learned that the man had pretty awful intentions with the 3 of us. I never thought of the fact that he didn't bring any of my brothers with us. When the officer asked him why that was, he simply replied that the other brother would have talked. In short, kidnapped at 7, forced to drink beer when thirsty, and nearly the victim of God knows what by a drunk man before he was arrested. Let this be a lesson to parents listening. It's not just strange men you have to look out for. Even acquaintances like this can have pretty sinister intentions. Scary stuff. I was born in Boynton Beach, Florida, and spent my first few years in a home that skirted some really rough neighborhoods. Though the houses on my street were mostly low-income and minority families who were just trying to raise their kids, occasionally we'd have some break-ins or gang fights overflow into our community. For a span of a few years, we had a smack-addicted homeless man who would hit our neighborhood for easily pawnable goods to support his habit. The cops always knew it was him and would lock him up for a few months, and then when released, he'd be at it again. I was really young, just under 3 years old, the night he broke into our house for the second time. He woke me up as he was shining a flashlight into my bedroom window looking for an easy way in. And moi, being the headstrong toddler that I was, got up to investigate the policeman's flashlight, as I later told my mum. Apparently, I must have scared the crap out of him when I sleepily greeted him as he came in through our kitchen window, because he abandoned all intention of robbing our home and instead picked me up to rock and soothe me back to sleep, laid me down on our living room couch, and hightailed it through our rear door. I'd forgotten the whole incident completely by the time my mum retold me the story later in life, and initially was freaked out by my 3-year-old description of the scary man with the long fingernails. However, I look back at it now with a level of humility. It could have been someone else, much meaner and a far more tragic situation. This man, who was bottom of the totem pole by most societal standards, an addict, homeless, and with petty theft on his crime list, was still a human being who chose to be gentle with a child. In some ways, it restored my faith in humanity. I was driving down a country road at night. I saw a deer crossing sign and decided to slow down significantly for the upcoming blind corner. Came around the corner going about 20 km per hour as opposed to the 80 posted limit. In the middle of the fricking road is some moron walking and wheeling his bicycle. I stopped about 3 inches shy of hitting him. If I'd been doing 80, I would have had to dig a grave. I like how you go right past, would have had to call the cops or fill out lots of paperwork, right to dig a grave. And you've got to dig quick too. If you spend too much time on the grave, someone will walk by, start asking questions, and, well, now you've got to dig another one. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was in kindergarten, a man I didn't even recognize came to walk me home. Being as stupid as I was, I grabbed my bags and went with him. I'm not sure how, but he even knew my name, I think. We chatted and he walked me home, and as I walked through the doors, my parents ran to me. Turned out they were looking for me everywhere thinking I'd been kidnapped. My teacher had told them that I'd left with a man claiming to be a relative. To this day, nobody knows who the man was that walked me home. I was chased by an adult male when I was 7. My mum asked me to deliver some eggs and sugar to a neighbor. Typical upper-class, northeast neighborhood, no crime. After I delivered the goods, I started back home, about a quarter mile. There were no streetlights and it was very dark that night, dark enough that I could barely see anything, when I got to a long bend with bushes on both sides. I just passed a driveway when I heard a loud rustling behind me, so I jumped and looked back at the same time and I saw a large, dark figure emerge from the bushes towards me. I was a fast kid, fastest in my class, fastest in my soccer club, and all I could think of was how dark it was and how if I tripped on something, I was a goner. I could hear a man's grunt and inhales and exhales close behind me. I couldn't hear his feet though, just his breath, and it sounded like he was no more than 5 feet behind me. I kept thinking all I had to do was get within sight of my front yard with all those lights and he would turn back and quit. But when we got that close and we were running in the light, I could feel him pressing harder, and I felt like he was getting closer. I decided to take a shortcut through a hole in a row of bushes that bordered our land. My siblings and I had used the shortcut pretty much every time we walked in that direction, so I knew there was a 2-foot drop to the driveway. I ran and ducked through the hole and into my driveway, and I could hear him crash through the bushes. Didn't hear him fall, and he was still after me. When I got to about 20 feet from my front door, I no longer heard him, which was good because I fumbled with the screen door, and in doing so, I got my pinky finger caught and cut off the last knuckle. I opened the heavy front door, jumped inside, slammed it shut and locked, screamed out for my dad, and didn't notice my finger was missing a knuckle until my mum let me go from a long hug. My dad ran out after the guy with a weapon, but he was gone. My dad came back, fished out the end of my finger and put it in a bag of ice to take to the hospital. But they said it was pointless, no pun intended, to try and reattach it. Forget why exactly. The police took my story, looked around, but aside from the bushes being jacked up and some grass pressed down in an obvious pathway across my yard, there was nothing. A few months later in a neighboring town, there was a boy about my age who went missing while walking from a friend's house late at night. Then another a few months after that. I never heard anything about the fate of those kids, and for all I know, it's not at all related to my being chased. But it erased the idea I tried to believe that maybe some guy was just messing around. A scenario that let me forget the fear of going outside at night. The boys' disappearances also made me very appreciative for life. And fast feet. Sorry for the long story, I haven't really thought about it in a very long time, so retelling it has reminded me I need to talk to my 2 kids about being safe around people. And maybe I should have them come with me to run the track for a few laps. Years ago, I was walking on the sidewalk during one of those silent hill days that San Francisco has sometimes, the entire world filled with fog, every sound muffled. Still on the sidewalk, I turned to cross the street and paused for absolutely no reason with my hand up in front of me, and felt something tingle on my fingertips. Something flat and yellow appeared and then disappeared in front of me in a flash, at hip level, without making a sound. It took me about 10 seconds to realize what I'd just seen was a taxicab streaming by at about 50 miles per hour that had been unable to see the road and had driven onto the sidewalk. The tingle I felt in my fingertips was my hand touching the side of the passenger's side window. In short, I'm the luckiest motherfricker on the planet. See, I've never witnessed one of those pea-super fogs that makes it literally impossible to see the road you're driving on from your car, but I feel like this is more of a driver problem than it is a weather problem. When I was around 9, I went roller skating with my older friends, who were around 12 years old. We had just skated out of our neighborhood area when I realized that I forgot something. So I skated home, which was literally 2 minutes away, got whatever, and headed back. I found out that my two friends had crossed the small road while I was gone and had gotten hit by a driver who ran the red light. It was a hit and run. It was especially sad because one was a long-time ballet dancer and she was never able to recover from it. Mum and I were coming home from the mall when I was 10. My mum says that she thinks the car behind us is following us. She makes a series of random turns and the guy is still behind us. She sees a cop car sitting in the parking lot of a grocery store, so she pulls into the parking lot and drives up to the cop. The man then hightails it around us and out of the parking lot, flipping us off as he passes us by. I'm still curious as to why he was following us. When I was about 3 or 4 years old, I was watching TV in the basement with my dad while my mum was out with her friends. We heard the door open upstairs and someone walking around. My dad told me to go upstairs and say hi to my mom, and being lazy, I refused. A few hours later, my mom came home and she asked my dad if he'd moved some of the stuff in our house because it was missing. We had been robbed. If I hadn't been so lazy, I would have gone upstairs and that guy might have taken me too. He might have also seen that someone was home and fled, but the other option is really scary to think about. I also avoided a confrontation with robbers. When I was in high school, I took courses at the college 40 minutes away, and the pizza joint where I worked was relatively nearby. Sometimes on days when I had a huge gap between class and work, or no work in the afternoon or evening at all, I would go home and take a nap, pretty much completely undressed. One day I had a long gap, but I decided that I needed to go get some new shoes for work, and so I didn't end up going home that day. I got a call from my mum as I was trying on shoes that someone had broken into the house. If I hadn't decided to buy shoes that day, the 2 to 3 men who broke in would have come across me in the back bedroom, a 17-year-old girl sleeping and undressed. Yikes. In short, brought shoes instead of napping at home and avoided confrontation with robbers in my groggy, undressed state. I was four-wheeling with some friends up in the Rocky Mountains last summer. I'm not from the US and this was my first time, so I was just a passenger. Everything was going normally, at least as normal as I think, yelling yee-haw while listening to the Team America soundtrack, when we took a turn a little too sharp and high-centered on the edge of a cliff. It was like slow motion as we slowly crept towards the edge and I decided to put on my seatbelt. The car got stuck on a mound, but wouldn't move backwards. I think the mound was the only thing that slowed us down enough not to go off the cliff. We were literally an inch away from plummeting to our doom while "America, frick yeah!" was blasting through the speakers. We don't let Corey drive anymore. I hope you see this, Corey. You're an awful driver. I was 19 years old, traveling by car alone through some pretty isolated towns. No cell phone. My trip was about 9 hours, and when you drive for that long, you end up driving with the same traffic for a while. There was a truck that had passed me and then slowed down to the point where it passed over and over. I was a little annoyed, but other than that, I didn't think too much of it. When I pulled over into a small gas station, it pulled over behind me, but didn't drive up to a pump. As I stood there while the gas pump ran, I noticed a man in the truck watching me, but didn't return the stare. I went into the shop to pay for my gas. As the cashier was putting my payment through, he looked surprised at something behind me. I turned around and my body felt like it could jump out of my skin. The man from the truck was standing close behind me, close enough to touch me by bowing his head. He didn't move, just stared. I walked around him and went to the restroom. I locked the door to the restroom as well as the stall door. When I opened the door, he was standing there waiting. As I walked to my car, he followed me. I stood by my locked car, keys in hand, looking at the man, who was a few feet behind me, in the reflection of the window. We stood there like that, him staring and me waiting to unlock my door. I was afraid that if I unlocked the door, he'd do something crazy like push me in and take off. What was probably almost a full minute later, he slowly walked around to the front of my car and said, "You be careful out there," before getting back into his truck. I got into my car, locked the door, and waited. He didn't move his truck to pull out until I moved my car. I got ready to pull back onto the highway, waited until a chain of a few big slow logging trucks were about to pass, and then pulled out quickly in front of them, nearly cutting them off, before gunning my poor little car's engine to speeds that had never before been at and has never been since. I hoped that I'd run into the police and get pulled over, but I didn't. This was near a piece of highway where women have gone missing before. In short, possibly could have been a missing woman along a dangerous stretch of road. "You be careful out there," were some of the most chilling words I've ever heard. In middle school, I volunteered to work one period for the school library rather than have study hall. I got along really well with the head librarian. I'd say he was the first adult I thought of as a friend. He was really friendly towards me. A few years later, I came home from college on break and my mum starts asking me questions about him. Turns out, he had been inappropriate with several people at the school. In short, didn't become the victim of the librarian. Now I have self-esteem issues. When I was very young, probably 1 or 2, my biological father hired someone to take out my mother and I so that he could leave the country. We lived in Europe and you couldn't just leave without taking your wife or kids, and he didn't want to pay alimony. Fortunately, my biological father lied to the guy to convince him to do it and said that my mother was awful and that I was a brat. The would-be murderer saw us in a park and decided to warn my mother at a party he knew they'd both be at later on. A few clarifications: this happened between 1989 and 1991 in a country that was still technically a part of the USSR. My mother told me this story and I verified it with relatives independently. If we're all going to be skeptics, then I guess I can never be sure if it actually happened, and I can't trust anyone, but if I have to go through life thinking that, and thinking that my mother lied to me for no reason at all, then I'd rather believe a lie. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.